All right, guys, I see you out in the audience there. Guys, anybody got the link out there in the audience to this talk this evening? I went to click through on it, and bloody Eventbrite is being a bit of a weird one, really. It's not giving me the Zoom link. It's fucking sending me around in circles. So I'm not too sure what the crack is. And yeah, shout out to High and Homegrown who got to 1,000 subs. Oh yeah, you are right actually there as well. Daniel Crowley says that it starts at 7:30, and yeah, you're spot on actually, Daniel. I must have been crossing my wires there with last night. That must be all that crack. But yeah, you're fucking on the ball there, Daniel. Fair play, man. So we've another 25 minutes there before that talk actually gets going. Pop it up on screen there so you can actually see what I'm looking at over my side. But this is the talk that's going to be happening there in 25 minutes. Yeah, spot faking on. Um, so I'm not too sure what the crack is. Hopefully, I'll get a ticket there shortly in my inbox. Yeah, still not in the inbox any at the moment. Give it time. Right, so guys, apologies on that one. I will get this. I will get this up and running there again in a few minutes. No point to staying streaming now until it goes like for 20 minutes. It's just me, like it not entertaining going to happen. Excusey. Yeah, I got a bit of a munching and went shopping as well as some other things there in the in that quick hour I had. What did you all get up to? Surrendable High Patch, you going to watch Oshina Donovan fight on Saturday? You know, from the Shamrock Bar, €15 to see. Is that the bare knuckle Surrendable? I heard there's a bit of bare knuckle boxing going on inside in Cork somewhere. I think it's this weekend. I've shown the fight card for it there. It looks like some big boys on it. But it's bare knuckle boxing. But I thought it was just being streamed online, or am I crossing wires here again with different events? Go on R420 cooking a dinner. Yeah. I think that's what I'm going to do there in a couple of seconds. Go down and get a couple of munchies ready. Come prepared. As I said, I literally went from collecting the smallie to the shopping. Had a quick munch and up here to do the stream, thinking it was starting at 7. So it's half 7 until 9. So apparently this is going to run for an hour and a half. Let's see how that goes. Oh, what's happening, High and Homegrown? Yo, our streams are clashing, man. Want us to hold back and come back on later, mate. Um, if you want, up to yourselves, High and Homegrown. This is going to be running from half 7 until 9. Apologies there, guys. I didn't even realize that she had a stream lined up this evening. I did see that you got to 1,000 subscribers though, and there's going to be a kick-ass competition going as well. I seen that really cool looking tray with the magnetic lid and all the little goodies inside of there as well. So nice prize to celebrate reaching 1,000 subscribers. I should try to do more things like that here myself as well to celebrate beating on to all of these different guys out there for some goodies to give away to people. But my apologies there, High and Homegrown.
Fuck off, man. What is the mic? Any prick.
Ah, you're actually live already.
And it just gives you all time to go to Martin's and smoke some. Watch his.
No, come on, guys. Come on, we all watch High and Homegrown together, lot.
I'll drop the link.
Let's watch High and Homegrown.
And travel over to Martin's stream and watch him.
Yeah, no, they're telling you to come here, but no, let's watch him.
Session from there. Sounds good, right?
Yeah, it gives me a little bit of time to finish this jar before we start up again, right?
Nice.
I can go and actually finish making my fucking coffee too.
Right
I
then.
caught your comment as I walked out the door.
I was hoping you did. But it's not as if it matters. It's like next week you do the same thing.
My bad,
Honestly,
guys. My
every
bad.
single fucking show I do this, boil the kettle 10 minutes before, and then I come and sit down and they get involved.
Yeah.
And I forget about it. And then you say, oh, we've got such and such minutes left. And I think, kettle. Oh, shit. So,
Right then.
So let's go over.
I wonder do the guys know that they're
Let's
on
go watch Martin,
Martin's
everybody.
World?
I'll be over there as well watching, and I think the Monkey might join us. I don't know. Maybe I'll close to.
Yeah.
But I'll be over there. So see you over there, everybody, and we'll catch you in a couple of hours. Goodbye.
Oh, they just ended. Oh yeah, that was funny. I was hoping that they might have gammed on to the fact that I was streaming their stream on my stream. But again, congratulations, guys, on reaching 1,000 subscribers. And again, my real apologies, guys. I didn't see that you had a stream lined up this evening. I didn't mean to clash with yours. Blame the transition greens. Blame the greens. But tell you what, guys, as Mackie and them want to get their bits and pieces there set up, I might open up a chat room there, and we'll get Mackie and a few of the guys in there, and we can watch this meeting together if they want. Like, I'll just open her up and have the meeting there so they can join. I see if he's in the audience there. Mackie, you out there? I was streaming you there a few minutes ago, but you didn't realise I'd say. But I can open up a chat room there if you want to join in. And as we're listening to the talk there from the Transition Greens, we can kind of have a little chat there for a bit. And then we can tell everybody then as we sign off here to go on over to High and Homegrown for more. Goodness me, guys. I'll leave that one with you. But like that, it'll be probably like as the talk goes on, it'll be probably just an hour and a half of just kind of listening and maybe a few comments. We'll be wanting to really do a lot more listening to the other guys talking, because the guys out there in the audience are heard loads, enough from us, like. All right, Monkey. What's going on, Monkey's out in the audience as well. Again, guys, I do really apologize for clashing with your stream there. I should have been ending all damn notifications there on my phone. As I said, it was the Transition Greens. I blamed them. Uncle Z complains again. John Finnegan's giving ZN a bit of hard time out there. So guys, what do you think we're going to get there? What do you think we're going to get this evening? Do you think we're going to get anything good? What are the people's feelings there? We're 15 minutes out. It'll be interesting to hear from me. Just opening up a meeting there now, guys, and yeah, that's open there now. I think, yeah, sweet. I'm gonna have to put a password on it because fucking this thing is murder for getting for just getting random dudes dropping in. Can you put a password on Jitsi? Sweet. I'll have to get a Zoom room opened up. Have you got a room opened already, Mackie? Do you want to just let me into your room and I won't screen share, maybe? That might be easiest. I'll have the 40-minute limit on my Zoom. I still haven't got the Zoom Premium yet. Be doing one-on-one all along. I was just about to set up a Jitsi, but fucking Jitsi is murder, man, for getting dudes just literally just bombing your chat room. So maybe if you have a link there, bang that onto me there, whatever way you feel. Yeah, boom. Hit us by Facebook. That would be probably the easiest one there. Maybe if you've that open, I'll hit your link then, and sure you'll be all linked up. Then everybody should be able to hear you. It'd be great to have some company on here for a change, talking to myself, and to yourselves, of course, in the comments. Like, but it does be a bit. It sounds one-sided, at least on my side. Callum, man, you're some man for the crack, right? I see Callum there in the comments, loving the old crack. Nice one for that. How about Instagram? Yeah, any of them was good. Yeah, I can open up Instagram here too. Clickety click. Savage, I got them all open. Fire from whatever way you want to. Just looking through my emails there now to make sure I don't miss the bloody Zoom link for this transition green one. Oh, excuse me. The Zoom link is in. Nice one there for that, Kev. I'll refresh my inbox there and see if oh, there it is, Kev. 15 minutes past on the button, quarter past arrived in. So there is the Zoom link. Savage cabbage. Nice one. I see High and Homegrown's after getting a message in there as well by Facebook. Honorary lads. Get out my spare camera so the boys can see me. All right, guys.
Right there. All right, I've got to mute this. There we go. Can you hear us, Martin?
Loud and clear, lads. Loud and clear.
Sweet. Right, there'll be a little bit of delay compared to what's on the YouTube.
Yeah.
And now Monkey's joining. And we just got GB to join as well. I don't know if he's joining now or what, but yeah, all yours, Martin. There you go. I think everybody can hear us and shit.
Yeah. I see the fucking sound dial is bouncing away there anyway, so it seems like it's going through loud and clear. Happy days. Nice one for the company, guys.
No, thanks for having us, man. We clashed with your stream because we hit that 1K subscribers and we're like, let's go live. 7 o'clock sounds like a good time. Let's do it. And then pow, it's like Martin's streaming as well. You know, no one's going to watch your channel when Martin's streaming. So we're like, oh yeah, fuck shit. We might as well end.
Sorry, guys. My bad there on that one.
That's all good, mate. It's our bad too. You know, we don't check with each other when we're streaming and things.
No, we need to link our flipping Google Diaries, I think.
That'd be handy, actually. Yeah. Just come up with one network, single network, where we all stream all the time.
Here's GB2. Well, not GB2, but GB as well.
Excellent.
Martin could be GB covered in shit now today.
Say that.
He's been out doing something in his garden.
So, sorry, what you said there, Monkey?
I was asking Martin, excuse my ignorance, but you know, what's going on in Ireland today? You're asking if they're going to get anything good out of this. What's happening, man?
So this is, again, another talking shop, really, for the politicians to buy some votes for themselves and score some votes. It'll be interesting. Like, what I'm most excited about, really, is Gino Kenny is present in the meeting. And you know yourselves, as he's supposed to be putting a bill forward in less than a few weeks. Next month, he's supposed to be doing it. So it'll be interesting to see if he spills any of the beans there on the bill, you know, as to what might be contained within it, because everybody's really eager to learn as to the contents of the bill.
Well, when we spoke to him, we told him to spam it full of, just ask for everything. You know?
Yeah.
What you ask
It
for,
worked
what
for
you get.
Oklahoma. Yeah.
The Vermont model is the best one, I think, to go with by far.
Malta.
No,
Vermont.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's pretty open there.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one.
Isn't Michigan
How's
the
it going,
best
guys?
one? Yeah, what's up, GB? You good? Just snuck in there, snuck in through the back door.
Snaking in, mate. Snaking in.
You good?
Not too bad. How's everybody been?
Oh, good, man. Just busy. But we won't take over Martin's show chatting ass shit.
No, guys, congratulations on 1,000 subscribers. Fair play. Good stuff.
Yeah, man, it's been a long journey, but we get there eventually. Yeah, 2.5K is the next milestone.
But this is your second time reaching 1K, isn't it? Though you got
Percy's Grow Room is a channel that I don't touch, but I spent like 2 months making 2 awesome fucking videos, and the videos took ages to make, and I put them up there, and they've got 200,000 views nearly a piece, and the whole channel's got 500,000 views on it last time I checked, and that was months ago. Now, because I just leave it sitting there. And every day we get like 10 subscribers on it or something. It's on 7,404 now, I think it is.
Savage stuff.
Damn. We should be streaming on that channel. What the fuck?
You used to be streaming on that one, wasn't it, though? That's where I remember you streaming.
Yeah. And then that got shut down. It was like, you are streaming against community guidelines, so we need to shut you down to protect the children.
Is that what happened there?
Yeah, pretty much, mate. Yeah. So they was like, you can't stream for 2 weeks because you need to learn your lesson. So it was like, well, fuck you, YouTube. We'll start our own fucking channel, pricks.
We've been fine since.
And now the next step is, because you know as well, we got to monetize. When you get to 1,000, you get to monetize your channel.
That's
and
right,
it's not like you'll make money out of it, because you're not going to get enough views to make money out of ads and shit. But you get the super chat and all these cool features which we want to have.
Yeah.
So the next step is to, go to YouTube and be like, YouTube, can we monetize our cannabis channel, please?
Yeah.
And they'll be like, no, dead.
Yeah.
And then we have to start again.
You'll find yourself in the same position as me, as everything is like limited ads or something like that. It comes up as so your ability to put ads is limited. But
I don't even care about the ads. I just want that super chat, man. I want that sexy ass shit.
Yeah.
So we can have that now. We just got to press that monetize button.
Nice.
So, I'm a little reluctant, but I'll do it. And if the channel gets shut down, who gives a fuck, really? We start again. And we got a good community that will just come back and be like, yo, well, what channel is the stream on this week? And that's fucking sweet, man. So fuck YouTube. If you want to shut us down.
Fair
Not
enough.
Martin, though. Martin likes you. Don't do nothing to Martin. Sorry to talk that way about YouTube on your YouTube channel, Martin.
You're all good. But we're not exclusively on YouTube. We got Twitch and Facebook up there as well, so we're all good.
But Facebook as well. They're pricks too.
Oh, they are. They're probably the worst, really. It was pointed out to me that I was doing bong hits off the screen all along. So that's probably why my channel is like
unintentionally.
I didn't intend it, because you can like see the top of the bong, like it's just that like the flame and everything else is off the screen. I didn't realize that. Somebody pointed out. I think it was Dan in the audience pointed that out to me, and I was like, "Fuck it, you could be on the ball there." Like,
it's like, yeah, it's off screen. Does that make it better? Really? How does that protect the children any different than having it on the screen, man? The rules are so fucking ridiculous.
Oh yeah, big time
stupidness, man. And the thing they want to try telling us what we can and can't do because we're dopey stoners, it's like, you all need to get a grip, man. Fuck yeah.
Yeah,
Drives you crazy.
I look forward to hearing what kind of things they talk about now in this, in terms of like
Yes.
personal limits, you know, in terms of how much you can possess. Like, I'd be very interested in to see what kind of kind of an approach they're going to be taking. Is it going to be very conservative, or is it going to be kind of like, come here, this should never have been illegal, just fucking open the gates and there'll be no harm come to anybody, really.
Let's see what they say, man. We'll be very quiet while they talk.
Yeah. Let's hope it works. Actually, I just realized that their link is via Zoom as well, so hopefully I can have two Zoom rooms open.
No,
at
you
the same
can't have
time.
2 Zoom rooms open. But we can leave, man. I mean, we're not going to be talking anyway while it's on, so we can leave and let you do your thing. And we'll be back at 9 o'clock over on the High and Homegrown channel. And if you're finished by then, mate, come and join us over on ours. You know?
All right, we do that. So when we finish off the Transition Green talk, I'll say my goodbyes and I'll join yourselves then for a bit of an after discussion, because you'll be probably watching it as well.
Yeah, man. Well, I will sit here and watch it. Yeah. I'll be watching your stream, but not in the Zoom, innit? Because it clashes with the other Zoom. That's right.
Savage stuff. That's the job, lads. It's been great to have a
Well,
chat with you.
Sorry, Martin.
Go for it, GB.
What's happening this evening? Obviously, I've missed some. The
Okay.
cannabis drugs policy, is it?
Transition Greens, they're doing a talk this evening on its title. I'll get its proper title there now. Cannabis and Drug Policy in Ireland. And it has Natalie O Regan, Miriam Haskin, Neasa Hourigan, and Gino Kenny speaking on the topic there, cannabis and drug policy in Ireland. So I'm going to be hoping that maybe we might get something from
Gino. They'll let me in the Zoom, bro. You gonna let me in? You thinking? Okay, who the fuck are you slagging off my Mary Jane?
I'll send you the link there actually in the Oh, you're going to be watching via my stream anyway.
Yeah, I'll watch via your stream, mate.
Savage, though. That's the job.
But let's get out of here because that's going to start in 4 minutes. You don't want to miss it. Everybody's waiting for that. Sweet.
No,
get out of here, Martin.
Congrats again on the 1K, guys. Congrats.
Nice one, bro.
Well
we'll
deserved.
Man. We'll see you in a couple of hours.
Peace.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. See, he's gone now. Oh, no.
Yeah, gone now, Mackie. But yeah, there you go, guys. The High and Homegrown podcast panel. Join us just for a brief bit there. We just realised then that sure we were in a Zoom room with them. We can't join the Zoom room then for the Transition Green talk. Silly us. So yeah, let's get this open there. So and we'll get cracking with the talk. I'd imagine it'll be starting there in the coming minutes. I'm just signing in there now, apparently. Excellent. So I'll get them up on screen there now as well, so you can all see them. Do you see what I see? Sorry, I won't sing anymore. That's like a very awkward looking room there.
Hey, Ben.
Yeah.
Just to say, I haven't turned on I can't turn on my camera, so you do it for me when you're ready.
I need to fix that. That's my
cool.
bad.
There we go, guys. Ooh-wee. Here we go, here we go, here we go.
You have been assigned co-host privileges and therefore can turn your camera on. It was an oversight on my part when I was setting up the webinar.
Thanks a million.
Great to see you all. We'll just give it another few minutes now. We should have plenty more people joining. I think there's a bit of confusion with the email link. So we'll just give it maybe another 2-3 minutes and then we'll crack on.
Crack on, kid.
This is just a reminder for those who have not already known, we will be recording the webinar from 7:30 or whenever we start. Thank you.
How is?
How you doing, Gino? Nice flag.
Yeah. Pride of place around here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you have the same one. Very good, very good.
Now, you know, mine's a bit bigger, I think, but size doesn't always matter. So
No, size doesn't matter in this game. As I say. It's what you do with it, as you say.
Oh,
That's
hey.
it, hey.
Yeah.
That's what she said last night, too. Ah.
And Natalie and this. Neasa, how are you, Neasa? Natalie.
Hey, Gino.
Hi, Neasa. Don't know. Miriam.
Mary.
Miriam there. Can't see. Miriam, is Miriam there?
I am. Hi, Gino.
Ah, Miriam, how are you keeping?
I'm great.
Good.
All is good.
Oh, look, and Martin's there as well. All right,
Oh,
guys.
good. No, I have a Mayo flag though instead of the
Yeah,
Palestinian flag.
it's funny. When I got elected first to the council, right? I was in 2009. I had that flag, and I was jumping up in the air.
I'll be back
And
in
there
one
was a
sec,
few
guys.
people from Mayo. He thought I was from Mayo, and there was a councillor from Mayo. Whatever, he's from Mayo. I said, Jesus, that fella, he must love Mayo.
We'll adopt you.
Yeah.
We had funny timing. I don't know, did any of you guys attend or catch any of the conversation hosted by Labour last night? I saw it on. I couldn't go, unfortunately, but Natalie, I see you shaking your head. Do you want to give us a quick?
Yeah,
How
I
was
caught
it? How did it go?
it this morning, kind of in and out of it, so I missed a bit of it because I kept getting distracted. But yeah, it was a good chat. Garrett, as always, is just blunt and straight to the point, and he just speaks the truth. So coming from him, it was more kind of a depressing scenario from Garrett, but a truthful scenario. Adon was very good, and Anna Quigley, as always, is fantastic. It's a woman who's passionate about her work, and she's been speaking on the issues for years. But yeah, it's up on Facebook, I think. You can watch it back, so I would recommend it.
It's up Martin's World as well.
Oh, absolutely will do when I can find the time.
Definitely going to watch that back. I actually keep myself and Aon keep meaning to have like we have a WhatsApp called Drug Coffee where we're just going to have a cup of coffee and talk about drugs. It sounds funny when I see it on my screen, Drug Coffee. I must watch that back.
She's a fucking barrel of laughs, that one.
Coffee, anyway, it's one of the most widely used drugs in the world, so that's a perfect name for it.
Go on,
and one I couldn't live without, so.
Me too.
I'm sure we're all in the same boat there, yeah.
Fucking druggies. I'm going to end the stream right now.
Right, I think we can probably get started. People have the link so they can join whenever, if they have registered beforehand. But firstly, I would thank...
Recording in progress.
Sorry, yes, we'll just get the recording going, actually. So, I'd like to thank all of our panelists for taking the time to be here and speaking with us tonight. It'll be great to have different perspectives on this issue, and I do hope that we'll have a very interesting conversation over the next hour or two. The format that I propose is, for the first half, we'll have some direct questions to the panelists from me. We'll start off kind of broad, and then we'll drill down a bit more as we go. We'll probably only get about 2 or 3 questions each. We'll try and stick to kind of 3, 4, 5 minutes answer per panelist, just for the sake of time. And then after that, we'll open a Q&A to the audience, and we can start fielding questions from there. I would just like to say that we did invite the Minister of State for Public Health, Wellbeing and National Drug Strategy, Frank Feehan, but he did not respond. So
boo, Frank.
Anyway, we'll get cracking.
Frank the Plank.
So I'm just going to go through and ask each of our panelists a specific question at the beginning. We're going to start off kind of broad, as I said, and then we'll get more specific. So based on your different backgrounds is where we'll start from. So Natalie, I'm wondering, would you be able to start us off by giving a brief overview of the kind of current drug policy and legal landscape in Ireland, particularly in relation to cannabis? And again, try to keep it to 4 or 5 minutes if possible. I know that's probably going to be an ask in and of itself.
Thanks very much, guys. Well, I'm from Cork, so I can speak till the cows come home and it wouldn't be an issue. But the basic rundown of the law in Ireland is cannabis is illegal. It is a scheduled drug. So we don't have different classes of drugs. It's all just one big schedule, big long list of substances and chemicals. Its origins in the 1977 Misuse of Drugs Act. So a long, long time ago. It'll be nearly 50 years in 2027. So it's in place a long time. If you're caught with cannabis, then it's a criminal offence. The punishments for cannabis do differ to other drugs in the schedule. There's specifically lesser punishment for possession of cannabis, fines, small sentences, whereas other drugs have the straight custodial sentences. But realistically, a criminalized record is a criminal record, and it's like the Damocles sword hanging over your head once you get it. So regardless if it's a fine, if it's suspended sentence, it's still a hefty sentence on somebody carrying it. It's illegal in terms of smuggling, obviously. It's illegal in terms of medical use, only for a very limited set of circumstances, which was ministerial license up till recently. Gino Kenny knows all about the MCAP. I'm sure he'll speak about it better than I would, and the same goes for Miriam. So that's your basic cannabis law in Ireland.
Thank you very much. That was very well within the time. But just to ask maybe a little more specifically, because I know one of the big cases that came through the media recently was one of the former executives of Keogh's Crisps, Anthony Keogh, was caught with a number of premature plants, you could call them. And to the best of my knowledge, his sentence was very lenient, you could say, for someone who was caught with approximately 8,000 or 9,000 euros worth of cannabis, compared to a shout out to Martin Condon, who raises these court cases sometimes through his podcast, Martin's World. But I've seen people, going through the court system for €5 worth of cannabis. So is there any sort of, baseline in terms of the court system, or is it just kind of who you are and who you know?
Yeah, there is no consistency to it, whatever. Like you gave the example of Tony Keogh walking out the doors of court, but I think it was 2 days ago or yesterday, Martin Condon had it up as well. A 6-year-old woman who had a very small amount of cannabis for her arthritis got 60 days in jail. Like there's other people out there. I know another 60-year-old woman who got caught with it and no previous convictions, very small amount, 20, 30 euros. And she now has a suspended criminal sentence. So like there's another guy with €4 worth, like I can go on. And then they all have criminal convictions. And then larger amounts will still get the same punishment or even a lesser punishment. And like, there's no denying it. Justice is supposed to be blind, but we all know that it's not blind. It depends on when you're a suit or wearing an Adidas tracksuit. It depends whether you have an address in the north side or a south side. It depends if your face is known around the street or if your face isn't known. So unfortunately, justice is not blind in that regard.
So currently, wild disparities within the court system and how it's dealt with. Completely.
And like I'd love to do some sort of thesis on it, but to obtain the figures, it's almost impossible because there is no judgment, there's no judicial record of the lower court system. So often it's newspaper reports that you're working off of.
Right. Okay. Well, you'd certainly be years trying to go back through all of those. But thank you very much for that brief overview. So now we'll move to Miriam. And as was previously mentioned, the MCAP system. I'm correct in saying you're one of the few people in the country who actually has an MCAP license, aren't you?
No, so I have a ministerial license, so I wouldn't qualify for to be on the MCAP because that's just 3 conditions. So I'm sure people here are sick of saying. So I take medical or medicinal cannabis. When I consume cannabis, my intent is medical for trying to decrease my migraines, and that's the real reason I have it. It's very much kind of a domino effect on me that I take cannabis to help sleep well, to decrease my migraines. That then allows me to play sport. And it's all this big domino effect. You feel well, you exercise more, you have less migraines. So either way, I wouldn't qualify for the MCAP as things stand.
Okay, and would you be able to just maybe briefly explain the differences between the two systems? Or if, as best you can.
Yeah, as best I can. Yeah, so in Ireland at the moment, we have the medical cannabis access program that really was driven by Gino, was on the call, and Vera and Kenny. Martin, as you mentioned, a lot of people have kind of driven to push this forward. Probably the biggest name is Vera. And what that's done is the government has brought in the medical cannabis access program for only 3 conditions. So that is if you're suffering with cancer and you've tried every other drug, if you have epilepsy and you've tried every other drug, and if you have MS, then you've tried every other drug on the planet. And then if none of the other drugs work and you have one of them 3 conditions and you get a consultant who wants to work with you, then maybe you'll get a license. And then when you get your, you get onto the medical cannabis access program, you know, you're going to be limited to a small number of products. At the moment, I think we only have 1. You know, it's just, that's not a medical cannabis access program. That's a farce. Nobody can ever answer why we have that particular medicine on the program. So even if I got on the program, the Cannapel that they have at the moment, I have no interest in it either way. So what I have to do is I have to apply for a ministerial license, and that's where the majority of the patients are at the moment. So I work with my GP, which is the person I should be working with. I then have my consultant endorse it. We apply to the Department of Health, and then we get what's called a ministerial license, which will allow my GP to prescribe, import, and hold medical cannabis, basically. The problem with that system is, number one, it's nearly impossible to get. I have a really strong relationship with my GP and my consultant, who, by the way, has absolutely nothing to do with insomnia or migraines, but he's a consultant that can endorse it. So we apply for a ministerial license. Once that's received, it's under my GP's name. My GP can then prescribe from a pharmacy within the EU. At the moment, we can only prescribe through Transvaal, which is a Dutch pharmacy. Transvaal only carry a limited number of products from one producer. So as I mentioned earlier with the medical cannabis access program, it's farcical that it only has 1 product. It's also farcical for the majority, well, sorry, not for the majority, for a small number of patients on the ministerial license program that don't fall into David epilepsy or don't have severe epilepsy. For somebody like myself that has migraine, insomnia, anxiety, I need a different array of cultivars, of oils, of different methods of consumption. Basically, what the ministerial license holder is stuck with is Bedrocan or more Bedrocan. And Bedrocan is a licensed producer out of Holland. So that system in itself offers no security. What happens if Bedrocan is bought over? What happens if Bedrocan change the oil that they're mixing with their cannabinoids? You know, there's a million different things. What happens if DHL stop delivering? It's an insane program at the moment, but I'm sure we're going to get into more details at the moment. So that's how I could legally access cannabis at the moment in Ireland. And that's after spending 8 years, coming up to 8 years since 2013. I was looking at my numbers. I've been traveling in and out of this country to feel well through using cannabinoids. So yeah, it feels a little bit at the moment back to the future that I've gone and worked in the legal space in Canada and then come back to Ireland and kind of, it feels like I've stepped back in time, you know, so gone from having complete access to products to now one particular strain. It's only a flower strain out of Bedrocan. Number one, I don't really smoke. So I'm normally someone that would consume through capsules, through topicals. I use concentrates as well. So I press my cannabis into concentrate. So to have to go back to smoking cannabis for a year and a half now since I came home during COVID, it makes no sense, and it's absolutely nothing to do with public health anyway.
Okay.
So sorry, a little bit of a mouthful, but yeah.
Well, no, thank you very much. That was really interesting explanation, and we'll definitely come back. I want to speak to you a bit more about the Canadian systems and maybe some of the differences that you see from there, because certainly it sounds extremely limited. Like you either have a choice of do you want it or don't you, by the sounds of it, and that's if you get that point. You know, if you get to that point.
And then if you have a good, and it's all about the relationship with your GP and consultants. The only difference between me and tens of thousands of other people is that I have a GP who supports me and a consultant who supports me. And that's the only difference. I don't have an arm falling off. I don't have a leg falling off. I just have a GP who's concerned about my well-being.
Yeah. And even at the moment, I know it's hard enough to find a GP. Never mind if they're good or bad, just to get one. But anyway, we'll come back to it. Thank you very much, though. So I'll move on to Gino. Gino, if you wouldn't mind explaining your party's position on cannabis and your upcoming bill, on which I believe is the Cannabis Regulation and Control Bill. Am I correct in saying that?
Correct, Ben. And hopefully I'll have a first draft of the bill in the next 6 weeks, and I hope to introduce it before Christmas. That's the idea. It's kind of out of our hands slightly. It's been, but it's been drafted at the moment. And obviously what we want to do is to challenge the very, very outdated laws in relation to cannabis. I'm a firm believer that, you know, cannabis needs to be regulated and controlled. We have the opposite in this country. And that opposite is causing all sorts of problems in communities. Because once there's, I would just say, a void and a vacuum, people will fill that vacuum. And that's usually the black market, i.e. sometimes, well, most of the time criminality, right? And they draw in all sorts of people. And criminalizing people for the use of cannabis is completely antiquated. It's unjust and needs to stop. Because the laws kind of copper-fastened that are completely outdated. And criminalizing people for cultivation of cannabis, the use of cannabis, again, is outdated. So we have to look at a different model. And that model, I believe, is legalization, is regulated, controlling it via kind of dispensaries. You know, people can grow a certain amount of plants and so forth. So a model like other countries have done. And the sky is not going to fall apart. In fact, you know, where we've seen in different jurisdictions, there's a revenue take from it. You take it from the black market, you control it. If you want to consume cannabis, that's up to you. You know exactly what's in it. You know, the CBD, THC contents in it. So it's very civilized, right? But, you know, there's certain kind of elements in, I would say, not in society as well, but in the doll, they're Jurassic, literally Jurassic, the way they think in relation to drug use. And we got to kind of change that. And we got to change the narrative that cannabis is somehow the root of all evil, because it's not. And it's been demonized for centuries, decades. It's been politicized, all sorts that comes with it. So we need to change that narrative. And the best way to do it is to challenge the law that's in here, but also you need a movement of people outside the gates of Leinster House. And I think there's a groundswell of people out there. No, because you know it's academic whether you use cannabis or not, right? It's about, is the kind of present laws working in relation to civic society, in relation to the resources that it's put in to stop people using cannabis? Because that's basically what the law is about, stopping people using cannabis. That doesn't work. Controlling cannabis as a controlled substance. I tell you, anybody that can sit there and say with a straight face that laws work, well, they're just kidding you. So to me, it just doesn't work. You need a new narrative. You need to go beyond decriminalization. You need to kind of have a model of regulation, because as I said, at the moment, the laws just don't fit the 21st century, and people will use cannabis whether it's legal or not. So in that guise, take control back off criminal gangs, regulate it, tax it, and adults can make proper choices. There's better outcomes for everybody. Harm reduction, yeah, we can address that, but you need control, because there's no control. Once you don't have control, you have nothing. So we need to best control back, not only from the dinosaurs, sometimes in here, but you need to invest kind of control from the criminality that comes involved, because it's very, very, very serious what's happening in communities. It's drawing in huge amounts of young people into very, very hard, more dangerous drugs than cannabis will ever be. So look, I'm quite passionate about this issue, and I think we need to change the narrative, change the law, and let's get cracking.
Brilliant. Cheers for that overview. That was very good, Gino. Right, and finally, Neasa, if you wouldn't mind outlining the Green Party position on cannabis, and then I know you're working in the background towards getting the Citizens' Assembly on matters relating to drug use announced, at least, but maybe, I don't know if you have any updates, or even just to explain to people, you know, what might be coming out of that.
Yeah, thank you. So the Green Party have an official policy of decriminalisation that includes cannabis cafes and a model similar to some of the European countries where you can own a certain amount. And I personally, I would be in favour of legalisation, I have to be honest. And I totally agree with Gino, actually, that I have to say, when you start talking about this stuff in the media, you often get asked, you know, are you a user? And I always think, well, that's completely irrelevant, because I think my interest here is around the impact that this is having on people's lives and people on society and the great damage that we're doing. And I think that, as you said, like, you know, I am working away in the background. Obviously, we don't agree with our coalition partners on this issue. And I think, you know, just to go through like some of the challenges there, you know, like there is a lot of resistance. I have to say, I think that before I kind of came into the Dáil, I must have lived in a little bit of a bubble, because I did, notwithstanding my parents, for example, but like I did mostly talk to people who recognize that we kind of live in a new era of, you know, globally, there's a new conversation around cannabis, and there's a recognition that some people, it really enhances their lives because of maybe chronic pain or for whatever, you know, illness they're dealing with, but also that when we look at, let's say, the impacts of something like alcohol or other drugs that are freely available, the contextual situation that we find ourselves with cannabis and the impacts of criminalization, the impacts of allowing criminal gangs to run it, the impacts of having like really unregulated products that have very high levels of things that, you know, can hurt people, the impact of that is really questionable, you know, in the way that we're controlling it. So I think I live in a bubble, and then I came in here and I realized that whatever resistance I encountered, let's say, in the government negotiations, which you would be expecting, I would expect to, and to be honest with you, the Citizens Assembly was our way of, you know, kind of maneuvering around the issue and trying to get something progressive that we could work on. I have to say the resistance is more than I was expecting. I think that I would completely agree with Gino, is that there is a sense, a pervasive sense, that cannabis is like this big, scary gateway drug, and that if we you know, loosen the reins here, it'll loosen the reins everywhere, and it'll kind of be Sodom and Gomorrah. And I have to say, when you balance that then with, as I said, the impacts of our current law, like, we really need to have a proper debate about it. I do think that there's a few other bits around, you know, the people that we hear talking in the media, particularly from the medical community, are often the people who don't support kind of more legalization or more relaxing of the rules. I think that doesn't help. And I think that, you know, our suggestion of the Citizens Assembly was an attempt to change that conversation, because we have seen Citizens Assemblies take issues that are complex socially, and that possibly, because of the way our voting system works, you're more likely to vote if you're older, you're more likely to vote if you own a house or you own a car. That means that the Dáil is skewed towards maybe kind of more traditional views, and it was a way of reframing that and having a conversation, because I do think when you see things like Gino's bill coming through, which will you know, and that will change the context and will allow people a chance to discuss this in real seriousness. You do see that it can change the horizon of what we're talking about, and we saw it with dignity, dying with dignity. You know, like, it is possible, change is possible. You can sometimes move the dial, but I do think it's going to be one of those issues that we have to have lots of very granular discussions with everybody about and try and bring them forward. And in terms of an update, the last update I got was that it would be in spring 2022 at the same time as the Biodiversity Climate Assembly, or Citizens Assembly on Biodiversity. Now, I haven't had any new information since that, and I'm going to hold them to that. And I've actually this week went back to them and said, is that still the schedule? I'm hoping it is. Until something is like done or right in front of my hands, just it's the nature of the coalition that I don't want to say I don't trust people, but I am naturally cynical and I wouldn't like to kind of give people an absolute on that. But what I would say is that I have had a discussion with the minister, Minister Fien. And although he absolutely is not, and I don't think he's made any bones about this, that he's not, hugely keen on this area himself, the recognition was that it's in the programme of government and we won the Citizens' Assembly in the negotiations, and therefore that will be honoured. So that's the only update I have, I guess.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. It was a very good overview. Yeah, I think it is interesting. I came across recently a 2006 Oireachtas report in which the minister is actually one of the signatories or was involved in the drafting of it, and it basically says cannabis is a gateway drug, it will lead to heroin use, yada yada yada. So I certainly as an individual don't have much confidence in the minister to move this along, but that's beside the point. So coming back around, second round of questions. Natalie, I'm wondering if you have done any work possibly around policing and enforcement, or if you know of maybe different systems in which they handle it much better, because I know we're very slowly changing how that system is in Ireland, where, the first time you're caught, depending on the guard, you might get away with a caution. And I think they recently announced there's a kind of a two-strike system now. I don't know if you might know a bit more about this and potentially could explain to us if you do.
What you're on about is the adult caution scheme that was announced end of 2019, start of 2020. And it's still not implemented. I think there's 700,000 euros going towards implementing it. So what is going to happen, like first time you get caught now, whether you're 18 or 80, if you get caught in possession, there is no legal mandate of discretion. There's no legislation there to allow guarded discretion. No, it can be used, it cannot be used. That's something that's going unreported. But the adult caution scheme that's going to be implemented, although it is a step, it is a baby learning how to walk, tiny toddler step. It's terrible. It's a terrible idea, but at least it's something. So what they're going to try and bring in is the first time that you get caught in possession of drugs, you are automatically mandatory referred to the HSE for an intervention and a screening if you require any assistance, any services, etc. The second time you're caught, it is up to the guard's discretion whether he allows you a second HSE intervention or briefing, or he chooses to criminalize you. The third time you're caught, there is no choice. You're criminalized, end of. So it's a three-strike rule, basically. But I think, although it is a step forward, it is too small, it's not enough, and it's almost laughable. Like what we have now is the first time you're caught with any drugs, whether it's cannabis or not, if in terms of this conversation, cannabis, you're caught, you're mandatory referred to the HSE for an intervention and a briefing. It sends out an automatic signal to society, you're an addict and you have a problem. So if Miriam didn't have her license and was forced to rely on the black market, she is now sent to drug addiction services and to the HSE for a screening. I mean, what are we labeling them, a criminal or an addict? I mean, you're just swapping one negative stigmatizing label for another. The second time, guarded discretion, as I've said before, justice is not blind. That discretion is only going to happen in some cases and not all. And then the third time, you're automatically criminalized. What's the point in the first two times if you're going to end up getting criminalized at the end of it anyway? I mean, the people who are going to get caught multiple times are the people who are most visible in society, which is you're homeless and you're vulnerable. The people who already have societal issues. And you're just going to criminalize them further. I mean, the whole point of not criminalize them is to intervene. But if you're going to intervene in the wrong way, then what's the point of the intervention in the first place? You're just adding to everything that's wrong with the system as it is. So there is other options, like you have Portugal. They have introduced decriminalization in 2000, so 21 years. And it was the experiment, and they were waiting for the sky to fall and the world to end and Portugal to be turned absolutely upside down by decriminalization. And none of it has happened. Like their drug deaths, their harm from drugs has dropped. They have had the biggest improvement. Their prison population has gone down tremendously. Alongside decriminalization, they also invested very, very heavily in the social services that's needed. And wraparound services that are located where they're needed, not centralized services. Everything is up in Dublin. Everything is in the city. It's only open 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Like, we're not talking about Irish services, proper wraparound services that are located where they need them, and they have had amazing results. It's not the perfect model. There's still issues. Drugs are still illegal. They're still sold on the streets. You're still buying them off the black market. So it is not the silver bullet to solve the situation, but just by stop criminalizing people, they've made tremendous improvements.
I come in there just really quick. We got a briefing. I can't remember, Gino, if you were at that one, but I have significant concerns around that whole program, because there's, as I understand the briefing that we got, like, there's very little, there's so much discretion, and like, I can imagine, you know, just in my constituency, like I'm in Cabra, the lads in Cabra are not going to get the same level of discretion as some young fella picked up in Glasnevin. It's just not going to happen. And I think that, as it was explained to me, is there's very little guidance given on quantity and type. So you could have like huge discrepancies between, like, someone then, you know, in one part of the city could have, you know, a brick of something fairly substantial and get discretion, and somebody else could have like a little plant of their own and get noticed. Like, it just affords a level of discretion that I'm uncomfortable with.
It's not set down in policy, and it's not set down in guidelines, and that is the dangerous thing. I mean, we've seen recently the headlines for the guards and what has been happening. I, for one, would not have very much confidence in the guards' discretion based on their track record. And we've seen it ourselves, as you said, in Cabra and Glasnevin and Blackrock and Dalkey are going to get treated completely different. So if it is going to be implemented, it needs to be implemented right. Don't do this halfway house of 3 strikes. I mean, you're trying to avoid the criminal justice system, not prolong the agony by having 3 strikes. I mean, there's some serious guidelines needs to be put down for this if it's going to be anyway successful. And I'm coming to the point that I'm actually thinking that they're bringing in all these things to make it look like they're trying to be progressive, but realistically,
not actually changing things.
They want to make it as bad of a program as they can, or make it fail, similar to the MCAP. You know, here we offered it to you, we tried, look, it's not working. Can we just go back to not doing it?
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. That was very interesting. I do think discretion, it's just wide open to abuse. It doesn't matter where it is. Like, if it's discretion and it's kind of a hush-hush system, it's never really going to work. It's just going to be wide open for abuse. But anyway, moving on. Miriam, coming back to the Canadian system, and maybe you can draw some parallels between that and here. But their system changed relatively recently, and were you there kind of to see before and after?
Yeah, and just quickly to go back to your earlier point, like, when you look at countries that have fully legalized and they're a mature society, and I find numbers that are never showed in Ireland. You know, you look across Canada, 97% of cannabis users in Canada, recreationally or medically, never seek out any help. You know, when the surveys and all any of the stats that I give tonight are all from Health Canada, so they can all be confirmed. But 97% of people don't need help. And then you look at the Irish stats and they're all completely skewed, because you're going up in front of a judge. And I can tell you, if I get caught with that and I travel around the world, you can bet your bottom dollar I'll go on any course available so that I can continue to mountain bike across the world and go on all my hiking trips, you know. So just so people are aware that 97% are all good. So it's right, yeah, moving back to Canada really quick then. So I initially went to America in 2013, had this life-changing journey between April and October where it completely come off opiates, long story, and it really helped with my migraines. Came home in November, realized things had changed for me, and I moved to Vancouver in April 2014. So I was there pre-legalization, and basically pre-legalization in Canada. And, you know, I hear sometimes from, say, the Cannabis Risk Alliance, let's see how they get on in a few years. Cannabis has pretty much been legal in Canada since 91 and in California. So you could get, I went over in 2014, I didn't even have to blink to get a license. There was no issue. So it's been completely embedded into society in Canada. all that's happened in 2018 is that it's gone fully legal on the recreational front. And it's basically the government has said that, do you want to keep cannabis out of the reach of youth? And do you want to protect public health and safety by allowing adults access to safe legal cannabis? And it's about keeping it out of the hands of criminals. So it's this choice of what we want to do. And with Gino's bill coming forward, it's so key that we come together on this. And there's, I'm sorry that Neasa heard that there was medical patients not as keen on recreation. And I think the problem with that is that they're just not aware of what the industry is, of like the beast of what the industry is. And they don't realize that full legalization actually secures medicine for me, for them, for everybody. Because at the moment, it's not viable for a company to come into Ireland and supply 10 patients. It's just not going to happen. It has to be complete legalization. And if you also only go medical versus rec, you're still going to be in this loophole of your uncle getting a license and giving you a little bit of weed off his medical license. You're going to go in circles. And that was the problems that they saw in Canada. It pretty much was legal. All they've done now is tax it, regulate it, educate it. And that was how I first stepped into the industry as an educator, is that it was for cannabis, for harm reduction. Because I had such a kind of change in my life with access to cannabis, I realized it wasn't this big taboo that they tell us. You're not going to end up taking heroin 4 days later. It's not a gateway drug. And all that, when you start Googling it, and I always say this even to my relatives, I joke around at the dinner table, if I could just get people to research cannabis, to go on their phone for half an hour, they'll come on board on what we're saying. And it's just about killing people with facts, that when we hear this information of people are getting treatment and the numbers are going up in Ireland, it's very disingenuous not to add, well, X percentage are up in court. Let's look at the data from across the world. Well, we know 97% are not need any treatment, only 2% do. But let's look at what happened to the youth when they fully legalized cannabis. Well, we know between 15 and 17-year-olds, it's decreased by 50%. Let's look at the data that when youth were using it before high school or secondary school in Ireland. So the number used to be at 59% were consuming before school of regular cannabis users. So you had a small percentage who were consuming pre-legalization in secondary school. You then looked at that number now in 2019, and there's a much bigger gap. There's nearly a 20% drop in people consuming before school. So all the facts and all the numbers are on our side for full legalization. It's now just kind of getting the groups together, both medical and legal, and pushing forward. And I can only encourage people to see that, like, the horse is bolted. Cannabis is legal. It's going to be legal. And, it's disappointing to hear there is such dinosaurs in our Dáil at the moment, because all I look at now, like when I went to work in Canada, I was working only on the recreation or the adult use side. I had no interest in the medical side, to be honest, because you can't make any claims. So all you're really saying to the doctors when you are going in pitching is, is it irradiated? What are the contraindicators? Whereas on the recreational side, you have experts then. Then now you're looking at, well, what type medium is the cannabis grown in? Indoor, outdoor? What type pesticides are you using on the plant? How long was the cure? How long did you dry it for? Did you wet trim it? Did you dry trim it? What's the lineage of the plant? Did the grower play music to the plant? Whatever happens in this legalization, whatever way it comes, whether it's medical or recreational, it's going to come down to price, and it's going to come down to quality. And really, quality is going to come ahead of us. And, if for me and my experience, if the Irish government would just let me grow, you'll never hear from me again. Like, I've gone from somebody who's, working, most people in my life wouldn't even know anything about cannabis, to now having to come on talks. And the idea of having to sell our souls to just get a license feels absolutely insane. It has to be full legalization, because not everybody feels comfortable going to a doctor as well. We need to be aware of that not everybody needs to go to a doctor. We're grown adults. It's part of moving Ireland forward as well in the maturity level to take the taboo away from cannabis and to be able to educate people correctly on it, So that was kind of one of the best things for me to see in Canada, is be able to actually educate people and about the different cannabinoids and about all the different methods of consumption as well. And that will allow that to come in. We'll kind of move away from the stereotype of the big blunt to, what, I use a vape and I use it from hydrocarbon extraction, or do you know what, I only consume organically grown, non-irradiated cannabis. grown in living soil, you know, so everyone's going to have, this is just a huge beast. And I can't, I'm trying to get that across how big this is, but it's already bolted, you know, and I just urge, you know, Neasa to keep pushing that, you know, we're talking about legalization, whereas we should be talking about regulations to keep farm companies from growing in Ireland. Like any cannabis companies coming up in Ireland, you know, your competition isn't in-house, your competition is Circle K, you know, so this is big and it's already there, you know, so we're just catching up. Whatever happens, we're catching up. If we legalize tomorrow, we're catching up, you know.
Very true. Thank you very much for that overview. That was super interesting. Okay. There's so many different things you could delve into and just talk about those for 10, 15, 20, half an hour. Right. And I imagine that's what you do on the regular.
Yeah, and we haven't even dipped in the right to grow a home, which has to be at the absolute foundation, you know, like because this isn't regulated in Ireland, we can do something really special. Like we can, in theory, create a not-for-profit industry where the retail and the for-profit adult use, that tax feeds into the medical side that can fund the medical patients. We can do what we want with this, you know, but let's keep it Irish and let's really, you know, support our patients.
Absolutely. And I do think there is a very interesting, you know, when people talk about like the Dutch model, the Portuguese model, the Canadian, like all of these things are inherently different based on where they're coming from. So instead of saying we should adopt the Dutch model, we should be saying, you know, how can we make an Irish model? So 100%. I totally agree with you there. Yeah, I 100% agree with you there.
And just two things to mention from Canada. Number one, your prescription isn't covered, whether you're getting cannabis or Xanax. And number two, the government actually runs the distribution. So you can't, you know, we're comparing apples and oranges. It's a different system. Like unless the government are going to set up a whole distribution system, you know, that's probably not going to happen. So it's like you said, right? It's taking the best from every country. Are we going to have our retail stores grow in the back? But we know one thing we want to do. It always comes back to safety, quality, and price. So that means local grows. There's no way away from that. It has to be grown in Ireland for that quality to be there, or you're going to just continue to have black markets forever, you know.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much for that. That was great. Maybe following on from that, Gino, within your bill, I know you're saying it's going through the drafting process now, but is there maybe some core tenets that you could share with us as to some of the things that you really want to see underpinning a regulation system in Ireland?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main kind of points of the new bill will be rescheduling of cannabis. So at the moment it's one, so that needs to be rescheduled, which is the obvious. It needs to be legalized, which is very, very obvious. It needs to be regulated, which is quite obvious. It needs to be controlled, and that control can come in kind of the way I would see it is from the state, and that could be a number of bodies, civic bodies, in relation to that, and then how people consume cannabis or obtain it. So there's a number of models around the world where you can, you know, consume cannabis or obtain it, and that would be state dispensaries. That's coffee shops, where Neasa has said, and also people can grow a certain amount of plants, a number of plants in their own home. So that's the kind of mechanism I would see in the bill, the main kind of points of the bill, and you know, it should be an industry that's indigenous, if possible, because obviously, if it was regulated tomorrow and legalized tomorrow, I mean, there would be a big demand. No, but there'd be a demand for cannabis, like, you know, and most people would go away from the black market and go down and buy, you know, wherever, like you know, like wherever cannabis they wanted, and consume it, whether there or at home. And you know, it's relatively straightforward when you put that kind of mechanism together. Now it's obviously, you know, to do that you have to change the law and so forth, and that could be a bigger task. But when that mechanism comes together, that can challenge the kind of take people away from the black market, and having to, you know, buy cannabis from people they don't even know. And it could be laced with anything, literally anything. So then it's regulated, and then people can make informed choices. They're adults, because consuming cannabis is nobody's business but the person. What is everybody's business is how it's actually not regulated at the moment. That's everybody's business, and that's very, very serious. As I said, it is fueling in certain communities huge amount of kind of intimidation, and it fuels a lot of the alternative economy. There's huge money to be made in it. Like, I don't know about you, but every single day there's seizures made of cannabis. Even, every single day the police put up, they've found 50,000, 100,000. So the demand for cannabis is big as ever, and that demand is not going to kind of subside by any means, regardless of if they put police on every single street on this country. There'll still be a demand. So putting all them resources in to jailing people, think about it. There's a huge amount of money that goes into putting people in prison. All the resources that the police, the courts take up in relation to cannabis use. So there has to be something different. And that's what we're trying to do as lawmakers, is to change a very, very antiquated and outdated law. Because at the moment, public attitudes, I think, have changed in Ireland. There's been a social revolution in the last 15 years. Things that were almost unthinkable, absolutely unthinkable, that would change in Ireland have, right? Now, attitudes to drugs are changing as well. They're ahead of politicians. And it's a nuanced question to ask people. Would you agree with a regulated system of cannabis where people make informed choices, where it's controlled? If you put all them on the table, I guarantee you the majority of people in Ireland would support a system of regulation rather than what we have at the moment. I guarantee you, when it's put in a rather, not a kind of hysterical way, if it's put in a kind of informed way, if it's put in a kind of structured way, I think the majority of people would say, look, I think that system that they have in that country is a better system than we have now for harm reduction and all that comes with it. So that's the alternative. It's a binary choice to me. It's a binary choice whether you want to keep the system that's at the moment that doesn't work, or a system that is better than the system that it is now, and it does work. It does work. It's not perfect. Nothing is perfect in this world. Nothing is perfect. So if you seek perfection, you won't get anywhere. We're trying to do something that is being done in other countries, and it's been shown that it works better. The outcomes are better for everybody.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. I think I can hear myself coming through now. Your speakers, Gino, for some reason.
Sorry about that.
But yes, anyway, thank you very much.
Probably booked this office.
Could well be, you never know.
Yeah.
Behind the flag, I'd say.
Yeah. I'll have to check. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing.
But yes, thank you very much. That was interesting. I'd love to really drill down into all the different types of models and things, but we definitely just don't have the time tonight. But nonetheless, I think it's great that more and more of these conversations are happening. Like, you're starting to see more and more people speaking about this. And you always, like, in the wider kind of zeitgeist or society, you always see this happening where conversations start to grow a little more and more. You start to hear about it more in mainstream media the odd time, so on and so on. But as you're dead right, like, it's always, society dragging the politics along. But nonetheless, that's the case in point for nearly every issue. But maybe, Neasa, I'm just wondering, would you, without spilling government secrets maybe, or you can if you want, give us maybe a bit of an idea potentially within the politics of the coalition and within the civil service maybe as well, because I know, like, the civil service do hold a lot of sway over these kind of macro decisions and policy. And obviously, you know, Fianna Gael, Fianna Fáil have been in government for decades, and they would be a lot closer with a lot of these senior civil servants than a lot of other parties would be. So how can people, you know, make a bit more of a change, or where do you see these blocking points within the policy and politics side?
Well, as I said, there's a lot of kind of traditional resistance to the whole issue. But I have been surprised at the level of systemic resistance, like within the permanent government, the civil service. And I think anybody who's watched the MCAP thing unfold, and obviously Gino is way more up on this and has followed it, you know, a lot longer than I have. But I have been incredibly frustrated by the MCAP. Just, I feel that, and I think, I don't know if it was Miriam or Natalie said that, you know, in some ways, some of the stuff that we're seeing coming through now almost feels like it'll be a barrier in itself, even though it feels like progress. In one way, something done badly can act as a barrier. And I really feel like the MCAP is a good example of the full weight of the. So first of all, like that that go ahead was given, I think, 2016. And here we are in 2021, and we're really only seeing the fledgling part of it come through now, and the amount of products is laughable that are available to people. And as anyone, particularly like because it'll deal with people who have epilepsy, for example, or a number of different conditions, as anyone who's gone through that process with a loved one or themselves knows, you often have to go through a number of products that say they do the same thing, but they just don't necessarily agree with people in the same way. And so the fact that we've ended up with a system where we only have like really one or two products available is completely unacceptable. And I do think that it's a model for how the civil service can use bureaucracy and things like procurement to basically stifle progress. And I have said that publicly, and I said that to them. I just think that's not like that's not fair. Like they're in a really kind of dumb, simplistic way. That's not fair what they're doing, and I think that there is a real resistance in the civil service against progressing this, because again of that idea that it's like this scary gateway thing. I think the way that does really copper fasten the level of resistance in government in general, because it's one thing, for example, like take the safe access zones, right? You know, there was a number of people in government who did want that, and even though the system, like the Gardaí and civil servants, were saying no, we don't need legislation there, there's a little bit of political will that can push it through. I'm not, and I would agree with you, as not being overly hopeful around the level of political will. I'm just saying that's different from an agreement in the program for government, and we got it and we're getting it. But I would agree that like that really doubles down on the difficulty. But I think personally the way around that is a couple of things. First of all, it's to kind of unpick all of that bureaucratic heft as you go along. So for example, during that MCAP stuff, they're very keen on saying, well, we're copying the Danish model and doing what they did. And of course that's not the case at all, because when you go back and look at Denmark, they're doing things like, as Miriam said, they're doing things like bringing in domestic production, and that's, like, it's worth going back through the detail and saying, no, that's not exactly right, and plugging away at that, because it is kind of granular stuff of unpicking all of the kind of rubbish that you get fed and you're expected to just accept. But I do think actually, and again, it's that thing, as was mentioned before, around safety, quality and price. I think actually to move the discussion along, we should move the discussion along. Like, we should stop talking about, who wants to smoke recreational cannabis. I think we should be talking about it in terms of, we want an industry here. Here's how we're going to build this industry. Is it cooperative? Is it, let's generationally move the conversation along so that we're taken more seriously around, like, who's going to produce this product? How do we make sure it's safe? How is it going to be doled out? Is this in pharmacies? Is this in Tesco? Is this in your local Circle K? And I think we need to start having those much more complicated and detailed conversations, and asking them to have those conversations, because now you're not into the ideology of it, similar to the whole repeal thing. Let's do the kind of deep dive. You're not into the ideology of, do you like cannabis or not? Now you're into, well, if we were going to make this work, how are we going to make this work? And I think that is a way to kind of you know, use their own rhetoric, you know, to push it over the line and make it possible in their own mind frame, or in their own mindset, that this could happen. It's not necessarily an easy thing to do, but I do think that, as you say, we will reach a tipping point if we continue to have public meetings and you continue, you know, and bills do come through and the Citizens Assembly goes ahead. And hopefully there'll be more and more data and good stuff that we can point to and research, that we will reach a tipping point where it'll be hard to argue otherwise. And I think that's the way to do it. I think there's plenty of stuff that's going to happen and is happening in like last year, this year, and in the coming years. I mean, you saw the big rows about farming in the Dáil today. Like, there are things that are going to happen in a number of spheres in our society that probably don't have the full support of, you know, a majority in the coalition, but they're an agreed thing and they're going to happen. But I would just counter that, you know, not everything in those agreements does get pushed over the line, and it takes somebody nagging and going on and on and on about it. And that's not me necessarily. That's like everybody. That's civil society, that's NGOs, that's opposition, that's coalition partners, that's backbenchers, everybody just nagging and going on about it all the time. And that's the way you push people over the edge.
Can I jump in there and just pick up off what you're saying about political will and Irish homegrown business and a homegrown industry? Like, the majority of cannabis activists in Ireland want a homegrown industry. We want the grow your own, the social clubs, cooperative model. And like, it is an opportunity to make a known Irish product. We're famous for our Irish butter, Irish sausages. Why not add in Irish cannabis as well with it? Like, we can see the lack of political will in terms of CBD in the hemp industry in the government. I mean, we have people in court for possession of CBD because it's organic CBD and it's not synthetic CBD. And that is purely the base reason behind it. Now, Miriam knows more about science than I will. I'll stick to law. But we have people that are going into courts for possession of CBD. We have farmers that are having to destroy their crops because they can only use the stalk and the stem. I mean, like, we have a homegrown Irish businesses. There is many businesses out there flourishing in the CBD industry, and they're subjected to raids. They're subjected to criminalization. There's high court proceedings. It's costing a lot of money for people who are just trying to have an Irish homegrown business, and they're getting targeted. They're getting raided. They're getting their businesses ruined. So the Irish industry that's there has fought already through teeth and nail to get where they are, and they are just becoming more and more successful in the industry. There's no even support from the government to foster that. It's grown out of nothing. It's the phoenix from the ashes, basically. And they're still trying to destroy it. So there is absolutely no political will. They're trying to destroy what Irish industry is there as it is. I'd question the desire if we're ever going to get them to care about an Irish industry in cannabis.
I would too. I mean, I don't necessarily think that as I said, I don't think the political will is there.
No.
And I know I always kind of think, like, we're always arguing that the reason we have so much livestock is because it's so great to grow grass here and people can go out to pasture. Well, I mean, why aren't we growing more hemp then? It doesn't make any sense.
Miriam will probably have all the answers to the soil and the plant and all the different science behind it.
Yeah, well, I just, you know, I know I said at the start, it does feel like I'm in the Back to the Future movie, because this beast has left. You know, recreational legal cannabis is bolted. It's out there. Like, 3 of the brands I work for, Whistler Medical, San Rafael. You know, San Rafael, just to think of the branding behind that. San Rafael is the town that 420 was started. So anyone knows the time 420, where a bunch of friends met up at 420, that actually happened in the town of San Rafael. So they weren't able to trademark 420, but we trademarked it San Rafael. You know, it's just to give an idea of, this is truly like gone. You know, you look to California, the cookies brands. I walk around Dublin and I see Californian cannabis brands in hoodies on guys and girls around. You know, we really do need to start moving this conversation forward on what this can be. And let's start off, have it indigenous, have it just with Ireland, because when you're in Canada, you can't import. So they're looking after themselves. They're looking across the way at all of us. and import and exporting over to Ireland and Europe and Germany, and and they're celebrated and they do their news releases for their stock share price. They're drooling looking at Ireland and Europe because we have the social welfare, we have the medical cards that they can overcharge for their medical products, but we're also gazing in with their brands that are already established, ready to go. It'd be as if we had no alcohol in Ireland, and we'd look across the way and see Budweiser ready to rock into Ireland, and we're standing here arguing about, about non-alcoholic, or will we allow alcoholic or non-alcoholic cannabis? Like, it's just so off the wall. And that's what you mentioned as well, like, we got to keep nagging and keep going. I guess I would ask yourself and Gino, like, where does that go? Like, does that include having to sell your soul to the papers? Which, I think a lot of us have watched Vera march from Cork to Dublin, and I can only speak for myself. I found that really upsetting, to the point that I was like, well, what am I going to do with my little insomnia and my migraines if a woman can't even be given the dignity to support her child? Like, what type of society have we got in Ireland? And I think in the Dáil, they need to step back and really look at that and look at how we're handling society at the moment. Because watching Vera, for me, that just gave me a plane ticket to Canada, because what am I going to do? I don't even want to live in a country that treats a parent like that, and still to this date, it's treating her and other parents disgustingly, and not guaranteeing their medicine. And that's what this full legalization will bring through. It will guarantee that medicine in Ireland, because don't be fooled into thinking it can only be Bedrocan. Well, you can probably license that strain with enough money. They'll sell you the genetics, as a lot of companies are already doing. Or we can create a very similar cultivar with similar terpenes, similar flavonoids, similar cannabinoid makeup, and we just grow it in Ireland. Because who says maybe there's another strain that can help even more? But we don't know, because at the moment we're all limited. We're either limited to about 3 or 4 strains, or it's off to the black market. So, I just would ask, like, where do we go? I've emailed all the politicians. I've complained to the HPRA that the product quality coming from Bedrocan is not good enough. They said to contact the Department of Health. The Department of Health tell me it's between me and my clinician. So what do I do? But I'd like to say who did register it. The Dutch Department of Health has registered my complaint. So it kind of upsets me, because I really want to live in Ireland. But, like, we're living in a backward society at the moment, where I even find that, it's offensive at times, like, to be thought of as a criminal, or to be thought of as, some type of drug addict, like, just I'm a successful person, So yeah, it's just, we need to move mountains. I just think that, like, and I don't mean to push back that, yeah, of course we need to niggle, but I just think there needs to be a realization that we need to move mountains here rather than hills, kind of.
I don't know if you want to come in there, but just on the issue of, like, I don't know how to say this in a way that the reality is that what I see in my political life every day is people having to trot out their story of personal pain to highlight an issue. And I wish it wasn't the case, but I would be lying if I said that wasn't the case. And you hear it, like, on calls, and there's people in tears, and there's people outside the Dáil, and I think that as terrible and unfair as that is, there's also no substitute for changing somebody's mind than explaining to them how it's actually impacting you. And I don't think that's really fair, but I don't know if I can tell you anything different tonight than that.
Yeah. And I guess one of the big, we hear so much misinformation about cannabis given out. When I hear, say, the Cannabis Risk Alliance speak, and you hear sometimes Frank Feehan and other people, and it's absolutely incorrect information, and if it was, we hear this false information so much in the recent years, and fake news and all, like, how is that held accountable? Like, how do we hold people accountable for telling the civil servants misinformation, and then they're giving advice to the Minister of Health, and it's incorrect advice, and they won't speak to anybody who's connected with cannabis, whether that's a patient group, somebody like myself that's worked there. There's endless Irish people that are running large cannabis corporations. You know, there's no lack of expertise out there, and there's just no engagement. So we have people regulating a product who don't understand the product, and when they speak, it's blatantly obvious. And I don't know where you go, kind of, you know, I guess I don't know where to go. Like, you know, if I do tell my story and hundreds tell their stories, like where do we go if there's literally false information being given to our civil servants?
And
yeah, Gino, jump in there.
Just in relation to the access program, and it was highlighted in the Health Committee a number of weeks ago. And this is a journey that a number of us have started 5 years ago. I wanted to start positively. We have changed the government's policy in regards to cannabis as a medicine, even though it's extremely restrictive. But the law has changed, and cannabis now can be used as a medicine, right? Even though only less than 60, 70 people have access to it via, well, most ministerial license. As of this week, cannabis and medical cannabis products is available under prescription, right? Now, if you said that somebody a number of years ago, especially when we started out in this 2016, I said, look, well, it's going to take probably a bit longer than that, right? So we have made progress, even though it's incredibly frustrating. And there's not a week that goes by. In fact, there's not even 2 or 3 days that go by that a family will ring me up and say, look, they have a child or somebody, a loved one, and it's hard to hear. I have to say, it's very difficult. They've run out of road in relation to conventional medicine, and they want to at least try medicinal cannabis. Just try it. If it doesn't work, look, at least they've tried it. But if it does work, God, you know, it could be transformative. So all that. Sorry, my phone's gone off. There's institutionalized resistance against this from the very, very start, and they're happy enough to kind of just barely happy enough to kind of give people via ministerial license, and that's extremely bureaucratic, right? Extremely bureaucratic, and only a handful of people will get it. So look, we have to keep kind of pushing the door on that in relation to expanding the program. I think it will. I'm an internal optimist in relation to this, because if you're not an internal optimist in here, you will literally go bananas, right? You have to be an optimistic person when it comes to this issue. I think in time, other conditions will be included on the basis of commercial reasons. Some ways, I think commercial companies have a vested interest in this, and you know, they will be lobbying the government to expand this program for other conditions. So that could happen. Just in relation to where was I going with that? Just in relation to the overall relations, because I try not to conflate the two issues, right? Medical and recreation, right? But look, for the purpose of this debate, and sometimes they do dovetail. Obviously, when we put the bill forward sometime this year, then you know a debate will happen in here and outside the gates of Leinster House, and there will be probably a lot of media attention on it, and there'll be a lot of discussion. Hopefully, it's a rational discussion. There will be a narrative in relation to that cannabis is the root of all evil, and that's. I'm not trying to trivializing. I'm not going to trying to trivialize some of the concerns that people have. I'm not trying to do that. But we can't take that just in isolation. We got to look at the whole spectrum of prohibition. And when you put all the mitigating circumstances on the table, you put them rationally. Prohibition has been an absolute disaster for people in this country. Disaster. It is punishing people, criminalizing people, sanctioning people for the use of cannabis. Now, again, anybody that says with a straight face can actually, support that. I don't, I'd like to see them. I'd like to see them supporting the present law around cannabis use. In fact, I'd even go further. The whole drugs debate has been completely skewed, and we need to have a very, very serious debate about regulation of all drugs. because we can't win. The war on drugs is unwinnable. It's unwinnable, and we need to have a bigger debate. But the main thing is that we'll have the bill, we'll have a debate, and hopefully, it can pass to the next stage at least. I know individual members of Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil have come up to me in a personal capacity. They would support the issue, but it doesn't work like that. They have to kind of, they have to vote with their party. I mean, even Cathal Crowe kind of surprised me there 2 weeks ago at the Health Committee. Now I don't know if he supports legalization, but he said in a rational, he said we need to have a different debate about cannabis use, more of a kind of maybe possibly a regulated system. So look at individual. That's what I'd be calling now individual TDs of parties in government to break ranks with their, well, at least speak out and say, look at, our present policies in relation to cannabis use don't work. Here's a different system. So hopefully that'll work. We'll see.
Just to jump in here, I do think I hope that we're reaching a point kind of similar, to the repeal and abortion campaign, where it's gone from individuals who are really, really affected by these issues telling their stories for a number of years. It's slowly starting to break through into kind of wider conversations. And as Gino just said, with his bill coming up, that will cause debate, regardless of, if people are pro or against it. It's going to cause those conversations. And the Citizens' Assembly, when it does happen, will also cause those conversations. And I really do hope that the more and more we talk about this, the more people will come around and understand kind of the humanity and the dignity that's wrapped up in all these issues, as well as just looking at this as like a drug issue. This intersects so many different things, and it means so much for completely different people, which some people just can't conceptualize at all. And it's only through having these types of conversations that we can get there. And I do think it must be absolutely exhausting for individuals who live this on a day-to-day basis. And all we can do is everyone else to try and push the conversation as best we can to people who normally wouldn't speak about these things. But anyway, just to move on, we're going to open up the questions now to the audience. But just while we're waiting a few questions to come in, I'm just hoping if we can run through with all of you guys, just very briefly, in like 60 seconds, what would you like to see in the next 2 years change in this area? So we'll start, Natalie, you've been quiet for a little while, so we'll start with you.
I want to see everybody getting criminalized for cannabis consumption and possession. I want those in prison for cannabis related crimes to be released and their records wiped clean. I want people allowed to grow their own at home for medicinal or recreational. I want an Irish homegrown Indigenous business. I want the revenue of that to be ring fenced for youth projects, local community, local services, mental health services, addiction services, alcohol services, medical services, hospital, clinic services. Like, there is great potential. And when I mean figures will astound you if you look into it. Like Colorado in the first year after legalization, 4.5 million population, very similar demographic to Ireland, 700 million in the first year in revenue. What could we do with that money? What housing, what SNAs, what medicine, what scoliosis treatment can we get for people? Like, there is a lot of potential to do with this money, stuff that we really need to be done.
That's right. Those are some great points. I think, Miriam, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'm sure. Same as similar to Natalie. But I would love to see Ireland lead and do something different. I think this is a plant that really can be a not-for-profit. Like, I don't think we should be going hard into this plant to monopolize it. It's going to give us a lesson anyway, because quality is going to win. So what I would love to see in the next 2 years is a complete deregulation, obviously, but grow at home. And grow at home would include social clubs, so not-for-profit social clubs that you could sign up to have somebody else grow for you to keep the costs down. That's if we really want to get rid of the black market. That has to be there. And then retail stores and licensed producers in Ireland, and a minimum of a 5 to 10 year period to allow Irish producers to grow and to really establish themselves before allowing any other producers into Ireland to grow.
Brilliant. Thank you. Gino and then Neasa.
What's the question again, Ben?
In 60 seconds, what do you want to see change in 2 years?
Well,
so it's a lot to ask. But
I'll do around 2 seconds. Look at the law to change. The law to change around cannabis use and consumption. And once we can change that law, I think it's a progressive law. I think a law that could, that will be popular when you put all the arguments on the table. In order to do that, we need to change attitudes. Some in here, there's some very antiquated attitudes to cannabis. Some of them people you can never change. You just never could change. Well, I think there's a groundswell of TDs in the Dáil that are definitely can be won over in relation to reform, and reform, i.e., is regulation. And I think when you put all the facts on the table, I think there's a groundswell to change, to do something different. Whether we can do it this time, I really don't know. I mean, it's a numbers game in here, as Neasa will tell you. You need to get 80 plus TDs to support this bill to bring it to the next stage. Now, I was surprised in relation to the assisted dying bill. I thought literally hadn't got a chance to go into the next stage. It did, and it's brought her on to a different stage. Hopefully it will get legislated for in the future. So anything is possible. Everything is possible. Will, and TD is will always have one ear on public opinion. And if this becomes popular, right, things change very quickly. Just look at repeal. If you said to somebody 10 years ago, repeal would have been legislated for, I think people and getting the support they did in certain sections in the Dáil, I think people would have laughed at you. So things are always possible, but there has to be a will. And once there's a will, there's a way.
Is that right? And Neasa, do you want to finish up on this before we move on to questions?
I mean, I kind of agree with the three previous speakers, change the law, all that kind of stuff. I give a particular shout out to developing that cooperative model and that social, that community model. I think that as a bit, that not for profit model is really important to me, but also the issue of restorative justice for those who have been criminalized. I think that once we got the law changed, then it's a whole new world where we have to enter into that discussion around restorative justice, and that's incredibly important.
And I don't think it's something that should be forgotten in this wider conversation. Like, you don't want to leave people who have been more greatly affected by this behind at the end of it.
Absolutely.
That's the last thing you want to achieve.
I would actually love, if we do something like this again in the future, I would love to get Lynn Rowan on to speak, because I know she's doing some fantastic work at the moment around restorative justice. And it really is, that has to kind of underpin everything. We can't just move forward and leave people who already have been affected behind. Like, it has to be a whole systems approach. So thank you all very much for your perspectives and opinions on those. We're still getting a few questions coming in, but if the audience want to keep firing them in, do, because we'll just run through them fairly quickly. If people want to ask a specific question to a specific panelist, please include that, because I'm not going to know just from reading. But one of the first ones I see here is from an anonymous attendee. And it talks about, setting up institutions around research and research institutes. I know that Task and Uplift recently did a report into, what cannabis changes to regulations could look like in Ireland, and open to the floor. But do you guys think that potentially we need a lot more targeted research, which you can bring to politicians who are, and wider people who might be very skeptical about this whole thing, to say, this is the Irish context, like, this is in Ireland. This isn't some study from Canada or whatever. This is here.
The majority of the responses you get, and Miriam will heard it, Gino, Neasa, you've all heard it. Oh, we need more Irish research. We need more homegrown Irish research. We need more home-based Irish research. You can't do Irish research. The MCAP is in, or the people who are on ministerial licenses, they're not getting reviewed, they're not getting monitored, they're not getting supervised on their medication. So there's nothing informing the system. There is absolutely nothing informing the system, and that goes right across the board. They're asking for more Irish research, but you won't allow it to happen. So, like, there's only so much that you can do when that's the answer you get back is they need more Irish research, and you can't get there.
I think if we deregulated the cannabis, that you'd have a number of NGOs who'd like to engage with the research around it more so than they are now. But I would totally agree. But that's an issue that goes across a whole load of health sectors, is that we don't really have access and we don't collect disaggregated data, which means that we just work in the dark in our health system all the time.
Like, even during my research, some of the figures I was trying to get, it's like, oh, we don't have them. Why? Because we just don't calculate them. There is no answer. There's no rhyme or reason behind it.
And also keep in mind, you can't patent this plant. So there's not quite the appetite there. And similar to what you were saying, Natalie, like, you look to the States, right? It's been illegal there. You can't do the research there. If you do the research, they give you this government grown weed out of Massachusetts. That's, you know, have a quick Google, folks, and you'll see that it's not great weed. So yeah, we need to be able to study it. And again, it comes back to what I said earlier on the call, right? Like, my complaint over the quality of cannabis is being taken by the Department of Health in Holland versus our own Department of Health. So we need them to engage as well. Like, and I guess that comes back to my earlier point, who holds people accountable with this.
Do you want to come in, or will I move on to another question?
No, that report by Antashka, is it?
It's Task and Uplifts.
Sorry, Task. Yeah, it's very, very good. I recommend anybody to read it. It's a very well informed document, and you know, we can never have enough research, but let's get on with it, you know, and let's kind of, you know, move things forward. As in, you know, because once something's illegal, then very few people will touch with a barge pole. But once it becomes, you know, somewhere in the middle, you know, then, you know, I presume it's not as taboo as something is illegal. So we need to kind of move forward and kind of be mature about cannabis use, whether it's medical or recreational or whatever you want to whatever kind of form it takes.
There's a wealth of Irish cannabis knowledge out there, but the majority of them are in Canada, Colorado, or else they're in the illegal market. And like, you have to allow the transition from illegal market to legal market, because there is a wealth of knowledge out there that will not be available in a regulated market for years to come until people get trained in it. You know, it's already there. You just have to entice those that are away to come home and nurture what you already have.
That's a very good point. I must say, I in my experience, for, you know, friends going over to Netherlands, places like that, it seems to be relatively common that you come across people working in cafes that are from Dublin. You know, the people are there, the expertise is there, it's just being kept in the dark.
I mean, those bud tenders in some jurisdictions are getting paid more than I'm getting paid at the moment. You know, they make good money because it's an education. It's almost like a degree. You know, it's there. We just have to nurture it.
I'm just going to pop a message into the chat here, because I came across, doing some research a couple of days ago, there's an organization in the UK called Transform Drug Policy Foundation, and they did a report in 2016 which is aimed at policymakers and lawmakers, and it's entitled How to Regulate Cannabis, a Practical Guide. Now, it's quite long, it's 270 pages, and I have not read it, but if there are people who are interested, if you search what I've put in there, it might be worth a look, particularly for policy and lawmakers. You know, you might find people who might be interested in excerpts of it, if you can find the time to read it, that is. But moving on, kind of a similar question that was asked here by another attendee is, so as we kind of made clear there, we can't do this research if the whole system is still being regulated to such an extent. So someone's asking here, you know, could we just deschedule cannabis? which would then, it doesn't necessarily preclude regulation, but it frees up the industry from problems around drug laws. So I think this is kind of, a step towards decriminalization in the short term to free up this kind of access, but it wouldn't necessarily be the end goal.
Like, it would still have to be regulated some way, because you don't want illegal market products coming in and undercutting price wise the legal market, because then that's a disaster. So you still need to have it regulated somewhat. But I think like some jurisdictions have shown that over-regulation and over-cautious regulation can just as well turn into a disaster. I mean, if you're going to put a magnifying glass on this regulation of cannabis, then you're going to ask for more trouble than you already have, because the illegal market will be easier to obtain, probably a better product, and like what you'd have to go through to get it in a legal market, it's not worth the hassle. So there is a fine balance between totally descheduling it and taking it out of the law and leaving it in the law for the right reasons.
Open to the floor if any of the rest of you guys want to jump in.
I think maybe somebody can maybe correct me on this, but it's possible to reschedule cannabis into Schedule 2 or 3 and not legalizing it. I presume that can be done. So it's Schedule 1, you bring it to Schedule 3. That could be done. It still doesn't really resolve the issue, but it's not out of the realms of possibility that could be done.
Miriam, did you want to come in? I saw you reaching for the mute, I think.
Sorry. Yeah, I guess, like, of course we all want to decriminalize, like, I completely agree. The worry is, as Natalie said, like, is the blend of the black market, and it's so important that we have testing, like that's going to be everything, right? Like, and even when you look at the magnifying glass around testing, right? Like, what part of the plant are you testing? What part of the room is that plant? Is it the back of the plant? Is it the top of the plant? It's going to give you different readings as well. But the main thing that we would be looking for is something called a certificate of analysis. So every time I would go to buy flour in a legal state or legally in Canada, I have a certificate of analysis, which will break down my cannabinoid content, different percentages, what pesticides, if any have been used, has it been irradiated, which is basically like zapped. It's a Canadian thing that we need to look at as well. So, every time you buy a product, like anything else, you want that test and you want that certificate of analysis, whether it's cannabis, beer, your potatoes then aspire, you want to know if they've been sprayed with stuff. So that's my only worry with decriminalization or moving towards that. It's just, is it going to be just basically open playing field for all the black market dealers at the moment,
I think unless anyone else. Right now. Sorry.
No, I said it take Anton right now to move things forward, though.
If nobody else wants to jump in now, we'll move on to another question. Okay. I have a question here question and statement from Oliver Moran, which says, in 2018, I launched the Green Party policy on cannabis. I was surprised to see how seriously most news agencies took it and how they asked questions about the economy and social differences it would make. He then goes on to say that someone in a public meeting stood up at the very back and just shouted legalize it when he was supposed to come in to speak. And then skipping on a little bit, the question is, how do we shift the conversation around the perceptions around the campaign of cannabis and about cannabis?
I think it just comes down to education. It's just pure and utter education that's needed. And I don't want to use the word ignorance in a bad way, but it's just ignorance of people, of not seeing what's out there and not seeing what's in their face and not knowing stories like Miriam and not seeing reality and opening their eyes. So you do have to bombard them with facts and figures, and it is just about education.
I'm just going to jump in quickly because Neasa has to go to vote.
I have to go.
And Gino, okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Sorry,
you both
guys.
very much for coming along. It was fantastic to have you here. We'll continue the conversation for a little while longer, Miriam and Natalie, if you guys are willing to stay on. But nonetheless, Gino
Thanks so
and
much,
Neasa,
everyone.
thank you so
And
much
do
for
it
coming
again.
along.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Greg.
Folks.
Thanks, Miriam.
Bye.
Have a good night, guys.
Cheers.
So yes, we'll continue just for another 20, 30 minutes if you guys are okay with that, and we can call it a night then at that.
Yeah, no problem. I guess just to speak to Oliver's point of normalizing it, it's really frustrating because it's like what comes first, you know, there's adverts out at the moment across Canada, and Natalie, I think you might have shared it too from the Ontario Cannabis Association, which is basically the equivalent
Fantastic
of
ad
say,
if you haven't watched
yeah,
it.
yeah. So Ontario, most people know Ontario, Toronto is in Ontario, but it's basically just an ad about, you know, normalizing cannabis, and a guy comes in with a bag of like meat of steaks. And he was, you know, the guy looked at him, he's like, what are you selling me? Like sketchy meat in a plastic bag for, you know, where'd you get it from? And it's just playing on that idea of like people buying their cannabis from an illegal source. You're like, is this sprayed with fentanyl? Fingers crossed not. So with legalization comes all these ads from not just the government level, also from producers of cannabis that want to normalize it too. And you know, Natalie, you mentioned earlier that regulating it. You know, that's a huge issue in Canada at the moment. Like that was one of my biggest problems when cannabis was first legalized, is trying to say, how can I say something that's uplifting, you know, without saying it's actually uplifting due to the cannabinoid or the terpene content. You know, we kind of moved to like cutting a little video with somebody drinking a fresh glass of orange juice in the morning, and this is what it makes you feel like. But normalizing it is them adverts, and it's a lot of, it comes down to kind of people sharing their story as well. You know, while it's illegal, it's a blend of people sharing their stories, and for companies to start pushing forward with adverts. I know we've seen Hemp Dublin sponsor an elite athlete. We see companies starting to step into that space and normalize sports athletes using cannabis. So it's that blend of education and getting somebody to bloody Google it, because we know once people look into cannabis, it's undeniable, you know, from every aspect.
I do think somewhat related to that actually is there's I don't think it's really broken through the main media yet, but in the UK there's I'm not going to say a guy, he's a character, it's kind of a persona similar to, you know, Blind Boy here, but there's a guy called Outlaw who's currently going through the court system. I think they're going to announce the settlement of the case in a couple of days, where it potentially looks like they're going to just win through legal loopholes and police misconduct and various other things, decriminalization. So it'll be very interesting to see how that goes, because, you know, so much of our news and just general media and culture and things is influenced by the UK. So if the UK changes, that could have a major impact in Ireland that we wouldn't see otherwise, particularly in the older generation, whom would have a lot closer links between family and things like that in the UK and here. So that would be quite interesting, I think. And I'm glad to see I wasn't the only one who knew him there.
There is a lot of people waiting on his ruling, because there is so many people relying on the same point. And it's argued in a like legal wise, it's a good argument. I really don't know what way it's going to land with the judges. I'm hopeful and optimistic, but you know, you can never really tell. But it's smart.
Yeah. So yeah, just for anyone in the audience who didn't catch that, it's Outlaw is the name of the guy or the character. But we'll just move on now to another few questions. There's a question here from an attendee. I think maybe it's a little bit late now since our two Dáil reps are gone. The start of the question is just wanted to ask if anyone had an idea of what the Dáil numbers would be like in support if we disregard party whips, etc. I presume neither of you guys know. I hope everyone, but we wouldn't know that, I suppose. But then moving on, there's can the government just reject the recommendations from Citizens Assembly? I'm pretty sure they're not binding.
Nope,
it's just recommendations. Yeah, so it really does depend on the political willpower. I know citizens' assemblies are a great, you know, tool of deliberative democracy, and it's kind of the first country in the world to come up with these sort of things. But it really does kick the can down the road a bit. You know, it'll take a year or two for the citizens' assembly to be set up, for them to do deliberation, and then to issue recommendations, which may or may not be taken into account.
but it's also who's going to be allowed to speak at the Citizens' Assembly will be the issue.
Yeah.
Like, is it going to be truly unbiased, or is it going to be tilted towards one side or another?
Yeah.
You know, and that is the main point really of the Citizens' Assembly. And Miriam was speaking a while ago about misinformation without sounding like Donald Trump. But that is a real issue, and it is a very prevalent issue, and it's often those with the most stubborn, ignorant attitude that are the loudest and get listened to. And it is very frustrating. I've lost many nights' sleep, and me and Miriam would text like, no, not again. Have you seen this? But it is like, it's frustrating. I don't know what else to say except it's frustrating.
Yeah, I remember a couple of months ago seeing an article in the paper of, cannabis is the gravest threat to the mental health of young people. And I was incensed afterwards because, as we say, people use these things to self-medicate, to kind of escape for a while sometimes. Like, absolutely, cannabis is not the gravest threat to young people's mental health. It's things like housing, jobs, all these sort of problems. So it definitely is like perspectives in some sectors are completely looking the wrong direction. They're looking for problems instead of symptoms to problems and things like this. So
the media is responsible for a lot of the scaremongering. I mean, we've had scaremongering since the 70s, since the 60s, since the 50s about cannabis, like Reefer Madness, terrible black and white movie, don't watch it. But like, there was one example is the potency of cannabis. And Dana Larson on Twitter done a fantastic deep dive into media reports on potency of Twitter, on media point of THC, sorry. And what did he say? He said, according to the news in America, THC limits in marijuana are 67,200 times stronger than they were in the 60s. So according to in 80 years of potency reports that the media have published, according to the published media, it's 67,200. I mean, like, it hasn't got stronger. Yes, it's more concentrated. Miriam would know more about this than I would. But like, think of it like alcohol. You have a 5% beer or a 40% whiskey. You're not going to drink them the same. Why? Because you know not to drink them the same, because you're educated or you learned your lesson very young. Like, and that has to be the same in terms of cannabis. Like, we can't say no concentrates. We can't say this. Like, it's education, and it's the media have to put out the proper facts and not this sensationalized headlines that they do put out.
Yeah, and Natalie, when I hear that as well, like, it's just the moment someone starts talking about that, it's just so clear that there's a lack of understanding what cannabis is, because the potency or the THC percentage, it does not equal the effect, and if, again, it comes back to this public safety, a 10% THC with a certain arrangement of terpenes, it's going to give you a very different effect. And one thing I used to talk about during the education talks is that when you were consuming from Whistler, which was grown in living organic soil, versus something that was grown in rock wool, not really minded as much, it's a different experience, so it's the not just the THC potency, it's the terpenes, it's the way it's grown, it's the type of soil it's grown in that's going to give that effect. And that, I think that's where the frustration comes from so many of us cannabis advocates, is that we are really passionate about public safety. And I am, like, the bizarre thing is, I'm completely aligned with the Cannabis Risk Alliance. I don't want youth consuming cannabis incorrectly. I don't want that to happen to anyone young. I don't want any adult having a bad experience with cannabis. So we all want the same goals. It's just how we get there, right? It's just laughable that prohibition is going to be the way there. The whole potency and the THC thing, it's off the wall, and it lacks an understanding of how cannabis interacts with our body. They kind of have this blunt or this joint in their head, and they completely miss that. Like, I use a patch and I use topicals, and so it's frustrating, and that's why we need to be able to kind of question these people. And I would love to have one of them come on one of these calls so you can actually have a conversation and push back on the data. Next one, Ben, now to get somebody on that we can debate.
Absolutely, that'd be great. I do think actually that's a real kind of niche maybe in Irish media circles, is, you know, like just daytime radio talk show stuff. There's been some fantastic interviews, but they just disappear afterwards, you know, unless you know to look for them, it's impossible to find them again. But there's a couple of radio shows, I think Red FM, Niall Prendeville, he's done a few. Some of them good, some of them bad, but nonetheless, he's having those conversations, you know, so it would be great if we could start just getting that sort of, because we really would be surprised the amount of people that would hear those during the day, just leave the radio on in the car, whatever. And that's a great way of just bringing those conversations to people. And generally it is a case of, you know, someone calls in and they're like, oh, I'm totally for it. I'm totally for it. And then the next person says, oh, it's fucking awful. You know, this is terrible. So it does sometimes get a good argument across, but nonetheless. There's a question here from one of the attendees. I don't know how much, I definitely have no idea about this stuff, but as an EU member, is it realistic to expect that EU companies in the sector would have full access to the Irish market, or can the Irish market be restricted to domestic companies? I don't know, do you guys know around this kind of company law stuff? Because to the best of my knowledge, we can't just say, you know, this is just Irish, like no one else is allowed.
We can't stop products produced and lawfully marketed in the European Union to stop coming into Ireland. Legally, Ireland has to leave those products in. That's not happening at the moment because in the CBD hemp aspect of cannabis, legally produced products in Europe that's getting imported into Ireland is resulting in people having their businesses raided. So, you know, EU law will work when it suits them.
Yeah.
You know, and I think if they really wanted industry of a homegrown industry, then they could. And at an EU level, this is drugs. So at an EU level, like they haven't really gone as far as endorsing a regulated market, but like EU countries are still flexible enough to do what they want within the space once they combat smuggling and cross-border issues. So like there would be two aspects of play in terms of the illegal market and the legal market, and can we differentiate? And I think Europe will be like Ireland at the moment. It's the horse will be bolted out of the stable before they actually get around to it, you know.
Yeah, and I think even in terms of any sort of European policy stuff, you know, you're trying to get 28, 27 member states to agree on something. It's going to be so watered down by the time everyone agrees that it will be effectively useless. Now, give it years and eventually you start to move. But
well, like we have Italy, we have Malta, we have Uruguay, we have Holland. Like
Switzerland just announced they're having a referendum on it in a few days, or they announced it a few days ago, I think, did they?
Yeah.
So it is moving.
Yeah.
So I'm just afraid that Ireland will get left behind as always, and we'll be the last ones rather than the first. I mean, we brought in the smoking ban when Europe thought we were crazy, and look at the ripple effect that had, you know. I think if such a small country like Ireland makes a firm, hard stance on it now and make our own model at it, we can show off and be peacocks to the rest of Europe with this wonderful industry that we've made and nurtured, and look how fabulous we're doing. You know, there is real opportunity there, but nobody's paying attention.
Sorry, now I just have a quick glance through. This is interesting now, from Cormac McKay. There's loads of old laws still on the books that the Gardaí no longer enforce. Why can't the guards take the position like the Dutch police did? The Gardaí are a problem as well, upholding outdated laws. We kind of mentioned this with discretion. And you know, there definitely is certain aspects of society that are a lot more relaxed with this kind of thing. Like when you talk to a lot of politicians, like they do often, you know, there's maybe it's not a case of like, yeah, we should legalize it, but it's kind of like, yeah, we should, like Cathal Crowe said during the MCAP debate, you know, we should be having these wider discussions. And as was pointed out, you know, civil service and some of those, like the more permanent systems within governance often hold us back. And even we saw with, like, you know, the announcement that GSOC was going to get more power to investigate Gardaí abuse, and the guards freaked out at this. So, you know, is there a way to do, either of you know, like maybe in different countries or anything, like how do we actually change the policing aspect without you know, having to completely change the whole system? Like, is there a way?
Like you have something that's known as de facto decriminalization, which would be very similar to what Holland has now. So in the Dutch model, cannabis is still an illegal drug, but it's unenforced.
Tolerated.
It's tolerated. It's still illegal. The cops can still arrest you on the street and convict you for it, but they haven't done it in donkey's years. So like that can be done. Obviously, it can be done absolutely anywhere. But again, there is so many issues in Irish society that discretion, again, will be only used for a certain sector of society. So like the way to how to combat that, I need a crystal ball. I really couldn't tell you how you're going to combat the issues that you have in policing in Ireland. I think like stigma comes down to a lot of it, a lot of bias, a lot of perception, a lot of negative stereotyping. But like these reactions and these attitudes, they're not born, they're taught. You know, like somebody's not born thinking a certain way. Like these are taught negative, biased, judgmental attitudes. We have to have the discussion of whether that negative aspect of policing is coming from outside sources or is it actually inbred in the police itself. You know, like is there the locker room discussions going on? That should not be tolerated. That's only encouraging it and enforcing it. You know, this needs to be nipped across the bud in all of society, not just the police force. Like this is something that everybody needs to address. Like you can't use words to describe people who use drugs. You can't, you know, call travelers certain words. There's a good reason why you can't do that anymore and why you can't, because it's not socially acceptable. It's not the right things to do anymore. Certain members of society need to learn that, from people to guards to politicians to the Pope himself. I hear my nan.
I think that, I think the saddest thing about cannabis, I find, you know, is that normally the call only comes through when somebody's sick. I mean, I think that's the saddest thing, and it's
last resort.
Endemic in Ireland, it's last resort. The dogs on the street know that cannabis helps as last resort. You know, when people get desperate, they come, so they know, because you will always hear people at certain stages and certain conditions wonder, will cannabis help? Can we use cannabis? And that's usually when the phone calls start coming through. You know, how do we apply? How do I apply for an MCAP? How do I apply for a minute? And it's sad because they've never stood up before or never recognized it. So I think it's an open door. We just need to kick it through. Like everything is on our side: facts, science, the stories, the people, the industry. It's all coming, and it's all going to come quick to Ireland. And whether it comes, as you said, Ben, through the UK and they legalize, because if they legalize, I can't see us not following suit in some way. You know, over in the States, the Democrats get it through and it legalizes in America. You know, that's, you know, then you're going to go Canada, America. We're not going to be waiting. You know, they're going to push through and see it then as a industry. You know, I think there's 33 states now that are pushing through for full legalization, not just medical. Are on the edge. So
I think federal legalization in the States is going to create such a huge shift in perceptions and priorities across the world. It's going to be a benchmark.
Yeah. I just hope we don't react, because, you know, if Kerrygold is selling across California, you can only imagine, you know, what Irish grown cannabis is going to do over there.
Yeah.
So it's positive. True. Yeah, it's coming. Like the only positive thing is that this is 100,000% coming. Full legalization is coming.
It's just a matter of time.
It's just a matter of time and how it's done. I hope we don't get done over in Ireland, because that's what it feels like at the moment, is that Irish industry is going to be done over, you know. But if we all stay together, even, medical and rec.
Yeah, 100%. But even from, you know, you could say a cynical youth point of view, that we already, now this is a bit of a generalization, but kind of sell ourselves out to multinationals. And I know that there was it 2017, 2018, there was a couple of cannabis companies from, was it the States, maybe it was Canada, who kind of set up a branch here in hopes that they would be the first ones when something did happen. I think they've left since, but clearly, like, there's. Tell us a little bit about that if you know.
Yeah, so I mean, I worked for Aurora, but I worked on the recreational side versus the medical side, but was, you know, aware of Europe. But yeah, Tilray started here. Like, I mean, when I first joined, like, that was the dream. It was like, because I had left Ireland, so I was like, well, can I go and try and bring cannabis back to Ireland? Now they've turned out to be different companies, and I thought, like, you know, it is what it is. When a company is floated on the stock exchange, they only need to make money, and that is what it is. But when they were coming here, like, my experience anyway is that it was done in a very positive way. They were passionate about access for patients. They weren't seeing it happening here. We would do the same in Canada and America as Irish companies. And there was a genuine, you know, obviously they wanted to make money, but there was also a genuine push for patients back then. You know, the share price has gone down a lot of these companies now that it's got a lot more doggy dog, and, you know, it needs to make money. But back then, you remember, even with Aurora, you know, they were helping Billy up north. They were giving him free cannabis, and, you know, even working in the recreational legal space. You know, the company I work for, Aurora and Tilray, a lot of them were doing it. You know, they were pushing for cannabis amnesty, and they're pushing to get the records expunged so people could travel. And that passion was there, that social responsibility. It's been pulled back now because the share prices have all gone off a cliff. But at the core really is a goodwill, you know, to bring cannabis here. I don't think they'll come back. I just don't. You know, financially, like, it's just not going to make sense for them to come into Ireland for 100 patients, 500 patients. I don't even know if it's worth their while for that, for 500. You know, like, they'll have a number. Unfortunately, I didn't get that information what the number is, but you know, like any company, they'll have a number of what makes sense. You know, but we don't need it, and that's. I can't say that loud enough. You know, we welcome trade, but we absolutely do not need it.
Yeah.
We can have this here, and that's what's going to create the quality either way, you know. And it's like they lose the, you know, when you think of, say, the Department of Health and they're making regulations, even if you just think of cannabis as a plant, the idea of shipping a plant across the Atlantic, you're obviously going to lose some of its quality and some of its efficacy as a medicine. So either way, it kind of doesn't make much sense.
There is still lobbying ongoing. Like, what the motivations behind those that are doing the lobbying is, I couldn't tell you. But like, there is a certain type of lobbying that's there, and it's almost, I don't really know what word to call it. It's like something wearing a cloak. They're lobbying for the side of cannabis that's synthetic. So you have synthetic CBD products are on the shelf. Because they don't contain a minute trace of THC, they're legally permitted. Organic CBD isn't, because it contains minute traces of THC. So, like, there already is that divide in the little market that we have there now. There is a synthetic product that's allowed and an organic product that isn't. And that lobbying is there. Like, there are companies out there who want to come in and make synthetic cannabis, synthetic THC, synthetic CBD. And they're the ones with money, I'm afraid. You know, and sometimes those with the bigger wallets do get listened to an awful lot more, and they are an awful lot louder. And I think that's the issue, is that we can't leave the other side of the argument go unheard of.
Yeah, I am worried that, you know, there are certain parties in government who have always been in government who, if they did decide to move on this decision, it would be, how can we get something from this? You know, who can we get to scratch our back from this decision? Now, that being said, if that happens, fine. You know, it'd be great to get a move in the right direction, as long as there is stipulations for grow at home, or, you know, social clubs, that people don't have to be reliant on private businesses to produce, because then your black market will remain.
Now, don't get me wrong, there is a place in every market for synthetic products. I mean,
sure, not solely.
Not solely, like, they have their place in the market for certain things, maybe medicine, maybe this, maybe that. But you can't allow the other side of the market and the other side of the consumer base to not be allowed to grow at home, you know? I really don't hope that will happen. I really don't want that to happen.
Yeah. And the grow at home was really, like, it did boom in Canada. It's interesting just to keep in mind kind of like how people are taking advantage of the cannabis plant. So the grow at home in Canada was actually lobbied by some of the larger companies to lower the amount of plants that were being grown because too many people were growing. So it's really, as a society, we need to be like, why are we legalizing cannabis? You know, and it needs to be that we want quality and lower price, and that grow at home has to be the foundation for anything moving forward, or we're just going to be stuck in the circle.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. So we are approaching 9:30 now, so I think we'll wrap up. But just my last question to both of you would be, for people who are interested in this, you know, are there organizations within Ireland that maybe people can help or like go to information for, or, you know, help move the conversation a bit?
There's loads of small ones, like there's loads of, not small because they're big, because any sort of pro-cannabis industry is big in Ireland, but there's Patients for Safe Access, there's Miriam, help me out because I'm going to forget, there's the Major Smoke Up, like they organize a lot of protests. What else? There's so many more, like there's Alicia Maher, follow her story.
Yeah, lots of small ones.
Follow her story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Like there's hashtag Cannabis Reform Ireland. You'd find the majority of people posting and information up under that.
There's a Facebook group as well. I've only been on it once or twice, but I know they do meet up every Tuesday. I think the Cannabis Activists Alliance.
Yes.
Seems to be just great group of people, you know, genuinely trying to make a change. So I think if people want to actually do stuff, they seem to be a great group that they organize different things. And speak out yourself. You know, if I can say one thing to people, speak to 5 people this week about cannabis, or this month. You know, like, we're the voices of this. Like, if you're at your kitchen table or you're with friends and they're speaking incorrectly about cannabis, or maybe it's just you coming out of the closet and saying, yeah, do you know what? I run marathons and I also smoke cannabis. You know, that's okay. Or I use the topicals. So it's about coming out of the closet to our nearest and dearest as well, because that's really what's going to normalize it across society for us.
And that's why these talks and this kind of stuff is important, because it's the start of the conversation. You know, you're able to say, oh, geez, Gino Kenny was talking about this in the dial, or Neasa was talking about it, or I watched this conversation last night. And it's a conversation starter, because it is often very hard to walk into your grandmother and go, here, do you know anything about cannabis? But, you know, it's something to start the conversation, and that's all that needs.
Yeah,
that's all you need, is just a conversation starter.
Yeah,
absolutely. I would agree. Again, you know, making the parallels to repeal and that movement and campaign, I think that was in large part one of the things that really pushed that kind of conversation in the right direction, was the amount of people who just went home and had conversations with people that normally they wouldn't have on such emotive topics. And it really can make a world of difference. And it can be very hard to see that, you know, in like the short term. You might feel shit afterwards, or it might be a little bit complicated, and you don't see something positive coming out of it. But on a much wider level, you know, if more and more people do that, the critical mass will be going in the right direction. And again, as I said at some point earlier, you know, I think a lot of these issues do come down to kind of humanity, dignity, respect, and just, you know, are we going to treat people like adults? Are we going to allow people to have these choices themselves? Because people will use cannabis anyway. You know, are they going to use it safely or unsafely? And we do have the power to change those things if enough of us call for it. But anyway, to end on that note, I want to thank you both very much for coming along. It was a fantastic discussion. And hopefully we'll be able to do this again in the near future. Yeah.
Thanks very much for having us on. It's been enjoyable.
Thanks very much, guys.
Okay.
And thanks to all the attendees who are here also. Yeah. Good night, everyone. Mind yourselves.
Thanks for support in the background.
No worries, you're welcome.
I don't know that I hear excuse me. I don't know that I hear correctly there at the end. Leave that there now. Boom. But I think I got like a little shout out there from Natalie just towards the end. I think Natalie was just like, oh yeah, shout out to Martin's World there in the background. I think that's what she said. I don't know. Maybe I have a big head. But yeah, that was kind of funny to hear that there. But I hope they appreciate it, just to get it out there to the wider audience, because not like I help share it around there on social media and stuff, like. But I'm just gonna turn my mic up a bit more. There we go. But I help share it around on social media and stuff like that, so I hope it was well attended. I didn't get to see how many attendees they had in the Zoom. But again, as I said to everybody, just to head over to their Zoom link, register for their event. You know, they obviously had their own interest there as well in doing this. You know, it's the Transition Greens. That's who organised that event. They're like a splinter group of the Green Party, but they're still the Green Party. It's a funny one. I don't understand like how they do that. They break off, but they're still attached. Irish politics, yeah, huh? Sorry, just moving a few things around there now. Get my screen back to normal. We don't really need a 420 news one there for right now. This isn't 420 news. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that stream there. Anyway, guys, I thought it was a good event. I really have to say that the two ladies there, Natalie and Miriam, I have to really hand it to them. Without them there, that would have been it wouldn't have been half the event that it actually was. Like Miriam and Natalie really added to what that event had to offer there. So it was great to hear from them. So well done to Miriam and Natalie. And also, look, it was great to hear from Gino and Neasa Hourigan there as well. But there was some interesting points brought up there throughout the chat. It was like if that bill is there, like, and the Green Party are told like not to vote for it, would Neasa actually support it after sitting on that panel there with Gino? But sure, if the Green Party, if they give her the whip, sure, she has no choice but to kind of, she'd be bound by it, would she not? So, yeah. Also, a nice one there too. Waterfish, water kills fish. Nice one there. I see that super chat coming in a few minutes earlier. Legend. Thanks very much. Well, it was good. Look, I thought there was some very, again, Miriam hammering it in there. Look, it is coming. Like that was the thing I loved from Miriam. Just that, like, it is coming. Cannabis legalization is coming. It's like, what are you doing here? Like, all you're doing is just like, you know, it's like, we need to be moving mountains, and all you're doing is just turning over little stones. And you know, that I just really liked Miriam's contributions there. Yeah, Natalie and Miriam should be put in charge of their rollout here. Yeah, that's very true. You know, in fairness, like we in very good hands there with Natalie and Miriam. But I saying fair play to Martin's World. Wouldn't have known about this only for yourself. Not a bother at all. I just think it's great that these type of events are being held, and for me, I just want to help further the reach of them. That was being held on Zoom. You had to register through Eventbrite. It kind of had a barrier there in itself, and getting access to it. And I just think it's important that this gets out to as wide of an audience as possible. And sure, if like it's on YouTube here, some people can just come along and just click, and it's like, just Transition Greens, drugs policy in Cannabis Ireland. Oh, I'm interested in that. Click in, and it's just like yourself. But there you go. So yeah, it was great to be able to stream that there for yourselves, guys. But I was saying, Greens are literally in government. They need a backbone to get this done. Yeah, that's it. They really need to just stand up for this policy. It's the right thing to do. People are suffering as a result of this prohibition, and meanwhile, you know, they're kind of, should we do this? It's like, come here, it's a no-brainer at this stage. Cannabis is already everywhere. It's just about time now we just end decriminalization of people, put in place like a proper industry here where people can get access to it, but also, like, you know, get your nose out of my backyard. Like, if I'm growing some cannabis plants out there, whether I have 10 or whether I have 100 or 150, you know, it should be no businesses a business of the government, as long as, you know, but I'm not intending to sell it afterwards. And who knows, like, I could be growing 100 plants because I want to look for a certain phenotype within that. You know, I probably have no interest in the cannabis. I'm just probably like, you know, I'm just going to have it there, store it, dry it, maybe extract from it, let's say. Why is it any businesses of the government, as long as I'm not intending to sell it afterwards, illegally without a license? So that would be my opinion. But we need this kind of thing more often, definitely. And Daily Talker says keep the likes coming. But yeah, guys, it was a great event in fairness. And if you're over on Twitter, give the Just Transition Greens, just send them back a bit of recognition for organising the event and holding it. Without them organising it, it wouldn't have happened. And I wouldn't have got Gino and Neasa Hourigan together myself, unfortunately, but the Just Transition Greens, they can, because, I'm so happy days. I was delighted for that. But definitely do give him an message over there, and Ben as well. But I know Ben, he'd be messaging back and forth there as well. Met a few times in the past, and yeah, nice guy. I didn't realize he was involved actually with the Just Transition Greens, or maybe he was just chairing it for them. I'm not too sure, but it seems like he was involved with them. But yeah, good to see. Nice guy. Page 85, criminalise anyone over a plant is injustice in someone's right of choice. Yeah, it is too. Yeah, violation of a person's human rights. I would agree with you there, Page. And Paddy J, fair play, Mountains World. Thanks for streaming. Missed the start, but we'll watch back. PS at Martin's World, check out the RT documentary on cannabis this evening. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I seen something in the comments there about that earlier. Got a bit distracted just updating the description of this stream this evening. But yeah, I will certainly, I'll have a look back at it there now on the RT player later on. Thank God for ad blocker. That's all I'll say when it comes to the RT player. Daily Talker, what if we all declared our cannabis use / cultivation? I wonder what would actually happen. Yeah, that's it. Daily Talker, I would agree with you there. I think a united movement there of people, if we were to sign up to an organisation, let's say the Cannabis Growers Front, and we all sign up and just publish our names or our addresses or whatever within that privately, and share that maybe with the local cops. And if they raid any one of us, expect all of us. Imagine that approach. But is it achievable? I would sign up. Not a bother at all. I would sign up if there was other willing people out there, who were willing to do that. I would love to start growing again. But if we had 100 of us sign up to this, so we all pledge. If any one of us gets raided, lads, we all go together, and we put in place a couple of guidelines ourselves, so nobody's taking the piss and growing a couple of 100 plants. You know what I mean? No commercial operations within that. We can set up whatever kind of cooperative there is, but keep not for profit in mind, and just reward the grower a reasonable amount of money for their time that they put into growing. I think that's only fair. And to the other people that are involved in the operation then as well, there'd be if it was to be formalized. But yeah, Daily Talker, that's a great idea. But cannabis, a union, for real though. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's been a long day. It has indeed. Yes, indeed. Stormed the building. Yes. Guys, I'm gonna have to start signing off myself. I thought that was going to end at 9 o'clock, and the guys hung on for a half an hour longer afterwards. I was hoping to get that little bit of an aftermath with yourselves there in that half-hour window I had. But I'm going to be under pressure here now shortly. So I do have to say, head over to the High on Homegrown podcast happening right now. At this very second, I kid you not, guys. So I'll put that over there onto that screen. 1 second now. There we go. That's over on that screen now. So this should pop up here now for me. Will it? Where are you going? Do we losing these buttons? There we go. the High and Homegrown podcast, guys. If you don't know what this is already, then get on over there. Check them out right now. They're streaming, and I might get on with them there in a little bit for a bit of a chat. But do definitely get over there. I kind of interfered with their celebration this evening. They hit 1,000 subscribers, so congratulations again, guys. Well deserved. But get on over there. Give the guys a sub as well. Add to their numbers if you haven't done so already. But we do share quite a lot of common audience members. Some lovely audience members at that too. So good night, guys. I'll be back with more 420 news at that all important time of 4:20 on Friday. And until then, keep it keep her lit. Stay blessed. Peace.